Part 7. Wang Yi was a little speechless. So it turned out that the new function still depended on his luck. If his luck was bad, would he not be able to sign in and obtain anything for the rest of his life? In that case, are there any restrictions on this directional sign-in function? Wang Yi asked again. In theory, there are no restrictions on the directional sign-in function, but the system is currently at the intermediate level. Thus, the success rate of items that are too precious will be very low. Wang Yi couldn't help but purse his lips. What was the difference between saying this and not saying anything? However, since he already knew the purpose of the directional sign-in function, Wang Yi was prepared to give it a try. As for what he would trade his sign-in opportunity for, this was a little difficult for him. In the past, he didn't really want anything, so he didn't know what to choose for a moment. In the next moment, Wang Yi's eyes lit up. He had thought of something. He had previously felt that the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique was too powerful, and his body seemed to be unable to withstand it. Why not try and see if he could trade his sign-in opportunity for a cultivation technique that could make up for his flaws and especially improve his body? Wang Yi was not someone who hesitated. When he thought of this, he immediately said, "System, use the directional sign-in." Ding. Would you like to use a sign-in opportunity to exchange for a directional sign-in? Wang Yi nodded and confirmed, yes. Ding. The exchange was successful. Please specify the item you want to exchange. I want a technique that can be paired with the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique to make up for the flaws in my physical body and increase my physical strength. Wang Yi calmly stated his request. Ding. The host's request has been recorded. Checking in. Ding. The first directional sign-in bonus has been triggered. The success rate is 100%. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. You have obtained the indestructible diamond technique. Just as the system notification sounded, countless cultivation insights and knowledge regarding the indestructible diamond technique were directly imprinted in Wang Yi's mind. At this moment, Wang Yi was not in the mood to check on his newly obtained body tempering divine technique. Instead, he suddenly felt like he had been cheated by the system again. Unwilling to give up, he asked, "System, for my first sign-in, will the success rate be 100% no matter what I exchange my sign-in opportunity for?" Ding. In theory, the success rate of using the directional sign-in function for the first time is 100% for any item. Cough, cough. Wang Yi couldn't help but cough. He felt like he had missed out on the entire world. His heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. He felt like his heart was bleeding. If he knew that the success rate of his first directional sign-in was 100%, why would he still need this lousy cultivation technique? He would have directly risen to the top. Therefore, he asked again in disbelief, then if I had chosen to exchange for the Sage Dao fruit just now, would I have been able to sign in successfully? Ding. In theory, the success rate of using the directional sign-in function for the first time is 100% for any item. Upon hearing the system notification, Wang Yi's expression became a little distorted. He couldn't help but roar angrily, "Then why didn't you say so earlier?" Ding. This bonus is a hidden setting. The host should have explored on their own. Wang Yi no longer knew what he was feeling right now. Initially, he had the chance to use the new function to sign in and train himself to the maximum level. However, because there was no notification from the system, he directly missed that opportunity. He had only signed in for the indestructible diamond technique. Thus, he had to rely on himself to slowly master everything. It would be a miracle if his mind was not affected by this. Wang Yi felt that the system was really cursed. It definitely had some deep malice toward him. However, Wang Yi was someone who could let go. Since he had already missed that opportunity, there was no point in regretting it. He might as well seize the moment. After resting for a long time, although he was still brooding over this incident, his mood was much calmer. He once again sat cross-legged with his eyes closed and flipped through the indestructible diamond technique in his mind. After he finished looking through the technique, Wang Yi couldn't help but gasp. This cultivation technique was really domineering. After mastering it, one's body would be like that of Buddha or Vajra. Endless power would gather in one's body, and one's body would be invincible. Once one perfected the technique and reached level 13, one's body could withstand the attacks of connate experts. Wang Yi felt that this was a little ridiculous. Apart from the seemingly reliable last sentence, which said that the technique would allow one to withstand the attacks of a connate expert, the first sentence was too unbelievable. Wang Yi focused his mind and did not care too much. He started cultivating according to the cultivation technique. Perhaps the system felt that it had gone overboard previously and wanted to compensate Wang Yi, or perhaps it was because Wang Yi's foundation was too deep and his strength was too powerful. He took a step at a time while cultivating this new technique. Even so, he only took 12 hours to raise the indestructible diamond technique to level 12, which brought it to the same level as the dragon elephant wisdom technique. Wang Yi did not know how strong he was now. He only felt that he had opened a physical treasure trove. His body was as hard as divine gold, and the terrifying power in his body was completely released. There was no longer any suppression. With a slight raise of his hand, he seemed to be able to tear the void. Wang Yi was a little absent-minded. He was also curious if he could truly match a Conate realm expert with his 4 divine techniques. Of course, he would only know these things after a battle. After all, he had not broken through to level 13 of any cultivation technique, so he did not know what kind of power the techniques would have at level 13. After emptying his mind, Wang Yi closed his eyes and sat cross-legged again to cultivate. He wanted to push the indestructible diamond technique to the peak of level 12. In the cultivation room of the Martial Wind Bureau in Langya County City. Boom! A powerful aura rose and swept in all directions, causing the spiritual energy in a radius of more than 10 kilometers to instantly become violent for a period of time. There was also a terrifying mental strength mixed in this powerful aura, like a peerless divine weapon revealing endless sharpness. Ha ha! A wild laugh sounded in the cultivation room. The voice was filled with great pride and arrogance. Finally, I, Zhao Tianlin, have finally stepped into rank -8. As soon as he finished speaking, a cyclone made entirely of true qi and spiritual power suddenly appeared on his fingertip. It seemed to contain a destructive power. Zhao Tianlin was shocked and couldn't help but mutter, rank -8. Is this the power of rank -8? This feeling of power is too wonderful. After dispersing the cyclone on his fingertip, Zhao Tianlin shouted outside the cultivation room, "Who's there?" As soon as he finished speaking, a man in the black uniform of the Martial Wind Bureau walked in. It seemed like he had been waiting outside the door. When the person saw Zhao Tianlin, he immediately stood up and saluted. Then, he said respectfully, "Sir, have you succeeded?" At this moment, a smile appeared on Zhao Tianlin's face as he said calmly, "Yes, not bad. I've broken through. Congratulations, my lord, congratulations, my lord, you've broken through to rank 8 of the Grandmaster realm. From now on, your martial arts journey will be prosperous, and you can expect to become a Grandmaster," the person said with a charming expression. Zhao Tianlin nodded slightly and asked indifferently, "How's the Su family in Kang City?" When the person heard Zhao Tianlin mention the Su family of Kang City, his expression suddenly became a little unnatural. When Zhao Tianlin saw this, he knew that something must have gone wrong. His expression darkened. "Tell me, how are they?" "Yes, sir. All the people we sent to Kang City were killed except for one who was released to deliver a letter." Upon seeing Zhao Tianlin's ugly expression, the person could only bite the bullet and stammer. Boom! A terrifying aura rose from Zhao Tianlin's body, causing the person who spoke to take a few steps back. His face immediately lost its color and turned pale. Who was it? How dare they kill my people?" Zhao Tianlin's cold voice sounded in the room. It was as if it came from the depths of hell and wanted to freeze the air. It made one's hair stand on end. When faced with the Grandmaster's monstrous anger, the person was like a small boat in a storm. His face turned even paler and he even found it somewhat difficult to breathe. Gritting his teeth, he said reluctantly, "Sir, according to the person who escaped, everyone except him died in Kang City. As for who did it, he won't say until he sees you. The man is in the agency now. Would you like to see him now, sir?" Zhao Tianlin barely suppressed the violence and killing intent in his heart. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Bring him to the main hall to see me." He could not help but be furious. All the higher-ups in Kang City knew that he had sent those people to target the Su family. The fact that those people had been killed meant that someone was provoking him and slapping him in the face as a Grandmaster. Inside the main hall, Zhao Tianlin sat on the main seat with a gloomy expression. He looked at the burly man covered in blood and said coldly, "Tell me, who is so bold to kill someone from the Martial Wind Bureau?" The burly man below was none other than the person Wang Yi had let go of at the comfortable garden hotel. The moment the burly man saw Zhao Tianlin, Wang Yi suddenly woke up from his state of cultivation. A glint flashed across his eyes and an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. It was no wonder Zhao Tianlin had not come to Kang City. It turned out that he was in seclusion. Judging from his weak aura, he should have just broken through. The burly man seemed to have suddenly thought of something terrifying and his face instantly turned extremely pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but his expression instantly froze. The light in his eyes disappeared, and he fell straight to the ground, lifeless. Crash! Everyone in the main hall was on guard, and their expressions became extremely solemn. There were no weaklings present. Thus, they could tell that the burly man was no longer breathing with just a glance. Exclamation mark. Zhao Tianlin, who was sitting on the main seat, instantly stood up. His surging spiritual power directly enveloped the entire Martial Wind Bureau. He was shocked. Who could have killed someone right under his nose without him noticing? "Why, are you looking for me?" A slightly teasing voice sounded in the main room. The people, who were still nervously searching the area, were attracted by the sound. Even Zhao Tianlin was no exception. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound at the same time. Countless golden lights suddenly rose from the burly man, who had already fallen to the ground and lost all signs of life. Then, the golden lights condensed into a human figure above the man. When they saw the figure formed by the golden light, everyone was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. A thought arose in their minds at the same time. It was a Grandmaster. Everything made sense now. Only a Grandmaster expert could kill the burly man in front of so many experts without anyone knowing. However, everyone was puzzled. When did the Martial Wind Bureau offend such a strong expert? They were actually attacked by a spiritual incarnation. Among the people present, only Zhao Tianlin was still calm. He stared at the figure above the burly man and said cautiously, "What do you mean?" Wang Yi, who was transformed from the golden spiritual power, stopped in midair and kept rising and falling. He looked at the extremely nervous crowd and chuckled. "Why, didn't I make myself clear enough?" Upon hearing this, Zhao Tianlin's expression instantly darkened. He had already given the other party a way out. After all, this was a Grandmaster level expert. He did not want to make such an enemy for no reason. As long as the other party apologized, this matter would be over. Although Zhao Tianlin would lose some face since some of his subordinates had died, it was worth it to have one fewer Grandmaster realm enemy. Unfortunately, he did not expect the other party to be so tactless. However, he just did not want to offend him. It was not that he could not offend him. After all, he, Zhao Tianlin, was also an expert at the Grandmaster realm. Moreover, he had already broken through to rank -8. Since the other party did not know how to appreciate his kindness, he did not hold back and shouted angrily, "Are you trying to embarrass me?" Wang Yi looked at the other party with a faint smile and shrugged. He said indifferently, "Isn't that obvious enough?" Zhao Tianlin was also furious at Wang Yi's words. He couldn't help but laugh in anger. Good, good, if you dare to leave your name, I will definitely pay you a visit." The angrier Zhao Tianlin was, the happier Wang Yi became. He chuckled and said, "I'm Wang Yi, the son-in-law of the Su family." You, Zhao Tianlin pointed at Wang Yi and was speechless for a long time. No wonder. It was no wonder that Wang Yi didn't give him any face. It was no wonder that he didn't hesitate to offend a Grandmaster like him. It turned out that Wang Yi was from the Su family. In that case, everything could be explained. However, he was surprised. When did the Su family have such an expert? Why wasn't there any information about him? At the thought of this, Zhao Tianlin's eyes turned cold. He glanced at the intelligence officer in charge of the Martial Wind Bureau in the corner. The intelligence officer trembled from being stared at. He was not stupid. He had also heard what Wang Yi said and knew what Zhao Tianlin meant by that look. Zhao Tianlin was blaming him. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart. It was true that he had gathered information about the Su family, but the son-in-law of the Su family was just a piece of trash who was infamous in Kang City. When did he become a Grandmaster? This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. Zhao Tianlin already knew Wang Yi's identity. Since Wang Yi was from the Su family, there was no need for him to be polite. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he spoke coldly. "So you're the evil spawn of the Su family. It's fine if you hide in peace. Since you want to stand up for the Su family, I'll definitely take your life when I descend to Kang City in the future. I'll use your life as a Grandmaster to bury the entire Su family." At the side, Wang Yi couldn't help but sneer. "In that case, I'll wait for you in Kang City." With that, the golden figure suddenly exploded, and an incomparably terrifying wave of spiritual power rushed in all directions. Everyone was in a daze. They were shocked by the sudden explosion. Look out! Zhao Tianlin was indeed a Grandmaster realm expert. Although he was a little dazed, he reacted almost instantly. He roared and formed a cyclone wall in front of him. However, it was still too late. A terrifying wave of golden spiritual power instantly swept through everyone in the hall. Then, like a peerless heavenly saber with dazzling divine might, it slashed across the entire Martial Wind Bureau. Boom! With a loud bang, the Martial Wind Bureau, which had stood in Langya County for countless years and represented absolute strength, fell to the ground and instantly turned into ruins. It was as if there was a thick layer of smoke and dust above the ruins, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Wang Yi, you've gone too far. I'll definitely take your head myself in the future. An angry roar echoed from the center of the ruins. The anger in it seemed to be able to burn everything in the world. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Before he could finish speaking, a dozen figures shot out from the dust. However, everyone looked extremely miserable. Their clothes were torn apart and hung on their bodies. Their faces were also covered in black dirt. Even Zhao Tianlin was not spared due to his carelessness. His luxurious robe was ripped apart by the golden spiritual power, and his entire body was covered in dirt. His long hair was also extremely messy. Although the group of people looked extremely miserable, other than a few unlucky ones who were weaker and had suffered some light injuries after being hit by the golden spiritual power, the rest were basically fine. They just looked a little disheveled. The explosion of spiritual power this time could be said to not be very harmful, but it was extremely insulting. At this moment, Zhao Tianlin's face was so dark that it seemed as if water could drip from it. Meanwhile, his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. He never expected that the Grandmaster who claimed to be the Su family's live-in son-in-law would be so ruthless. He had directly exploded his spiritual body just to embarrass Zhao Tianlin. It had to be known that spiritual power was extremely important to Grandmasters. Even an insignificant wisp of self-destruction would cause considerable damage to one's body. It was obvious that the other party hated him to the core. However, was it really worth it? Just as everyone was filled with anger and had their own thoughts, a bewitching man with long golden hair stood outside the ruins. Looking at the Martial Wind Bureau that had turned into ruins and a group of people who looked like beggars, he could not help but ask in surprise, "What's going on here?" He was also very puzzled. This was Langya County City, an invincible city with a connate venerable. Who dared to be so impudent as to attack the people of Langya County City? Upon hearing the voice, everyone turned around at the same time. Zhao Tianlin recognized the person at a glance. He hurried forward and bowed. "Commander Yang, why are you here?" The bewitching man frowned slightly. "How did you become like this?" Zhao Tianlin subconsciously glanced at himself and could not help but feel a little embarrassed. "I've embarrassed myself in front of the commander. An enemy just barged in. We were a little careless and let the other party self-destruct, which is why we became like this." The bewitching man nodded and did not pursue the matter. As long as the enemy was dead, it was fine. As for the loss of the buildings, it was not worth mentioning. However, in the next moment, the bewitching man's eyes suddenly lit up. He stared at Zhao Tianlin for a long time before suddenly smiling and saying, "Not bad. You've actually broken through to rank -8. Earlier, his attention had been attracted by the tragic situation of the Martial Wind Bureau, so he really did not realize that the other party had already broken through. "Commander, you flatter me. I only managed to break through to rank 8 by luck," Zhao Tianlin said humbly from the side. He was no longer as domineering and arrogant as before. The bewitching man nodded again. Then, his expression became solemn. He said in a serious tone, "Now, countless beasts have gathered outside the various large cities. They are intending to besiege the city. I'm here to announce a transfer order from the Supremacy. He ordered you to go to Junhong City to supervise the battle. However, since you've already broken through to rank 8, don't go to Junhong City." Quote, "The Guardian of Yunfeng City has just entered rank 7. The defense force is a little weak and lacks a rank 8 combatant. You can go over there." This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. Just as he finished speaking, Zhao Tianlin frowned slightly. He knew about Yunfeng City. It was located in the extreme east of Langya County, hundreds of millions of kilometers away from Kang City. It would be fine if everything went smoothly on this trip. However, if anything happened along the way, it was likely that he would be delayed in Yunfeng City for a few months. With this time, the Su family would probably have a chance to leave Kang City with that Grandmaster from the Su family. They might even leave Langya County. After all, a Grandmaster realm expert would be a VIP no matter where he went. At that time, he would really have no hope of revenge. At the thought of this, Zhao Tianlin could not hold it in anymore. He looked a little conflicted. After hesitating for a long time, he finally gritted his teeth and bowed to the bewitching man. He said in a deep voice, "Sir, can you send me to supervise the battle in Kang City?" The bewitching man was slightly stunned. He did not know why the other party wanted to go to Kang City, but he still smiled and said, "The Guardian of Kang City seems to be at rank 7. They also need the combat power of a rank 8 expert." Quote, "You've already become a rank 8 Grandmaster. There's no harm in giving you some privileges. I will make the decision to send you to Kang City to be the battle supervisor. However, you have to remember that if beasts cause trouble, your attitude has to be firm. If necessary, you can simply start a war. Don't weaken the reputation of Langya County." A look of ecstasy appeared on Zhao Tianlin's face when he heard this. In Langya County, military orders were absolute, while no one dared to disobey orders from the supremacy. He was only trying his luck. He did not expect the commander to agree. "Thank you, Commander." Zhao Tianlin hurriedly bowed again and said gratefully. The bewitching man smiled and nodded. Then, he took out a scroll with a red seal on it. "This is your dispatch document. After handing over your official duties, you must set off within 3 days. After arriving at Kang City, you should prioritize the transfer orders. If your private matters ruin the supremacy's orders, it's fine if you die in Kang City, but I'll definitely kill you if you come back alive." Although the bewitching man did not know why the other party was going to Kang City, he definitely had a private matter to deal with. He was also giving the other party a warning in advance so that nothing would really go wrong. Otherwise, he would have to bear the responsibility of not knowing the right person and assigning the wrong person to the job. Zhao Tianlin's heart skipped a beat and he instantly understood what the other party meant. He hurriedly said seriously, "Don't worry, Commander. I will definitely prioritize business." Quote. Only then did the bewitching man nod in satisfaction. "Don't take too long, get ready and set off as soon as possible." After the bewitching man left, Zhao Tianlin was no longer as humble as before. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he muttered in a low voice, "Kang City. The Su family, Wang Yi, treasure these last few days of your life." In Wang Yi's villa in Kang City. After Wang Yi self-destructed that wisp of spiritual power, the smile on his face never disappeared. It was too satisfying. After all, the Su family had been living in Zhao Tianlin's shadow since Wang Yi came to this world. The only pity was that the wisp of spiritual power he had left was too weak. It was unable to kill a Grandmaster level expert. Its greatest use was to disgust the other party. Actually, Wang Yi had forgotten that he had left a wisp of spiritual power on the burly man previously. It was only when the burly man saw Zhao Tianlin today and was guided by his Grandmaster aura that Wang Yi's spiritual power was activated. If the burly man was lucky and found a place to hide, he might not have died. Of course, this was fate. If the burly man was destined to die, he would not survive. For the next few days, Wang Yi stayed in the villa to cultivate and waited for Zhao Tianlin to arrive. However, he went out during this period and quietly went to the Su family's villa. He left a spiritual mark on the 3 Su family members just in case. Of course, such a spiritual mark did not contain any of Wang Yi's will. This was just an emergency device with terrifying power that could sense danger and protect the 3 of them. However, it was also during these few days of cultivation that the 9 Suns divine art and the little leaf flying dagger technique both broke through to level 12. However, compared to the other 2 cultivation techniques, they had not reached the peak of level 12. Even then, this was also an unexpected surprise. It probably wouldn't be long before a few cultivation techniques could reach level 13. Wang Yi could not imagine how terrifying his combat strength would be at that time. It should not be a problem for him to suppress a Conate expert then. Dong, dong, dong. When Wang Yi heard knocking on the door of his villa, he instantly woke up from his cultivation. The aura around him surged crazily, but it disappeared in an instant. Then, he stood up and walked towards the door. In the living room, Wang Yi looked at the visitor and couldn't help but tease him. "Why, Grandmaster Tang, why are you here?" Tang Zhenyu sat on the sofa opposite him and could not help but look helpless. "Sir, you must be joking. How can I dare to call myself a Grandmaster in front of you? It's just that I really have something to report to you today." Wang Yi nodded and smiled. What is it? Despite Tang Jianyu's words, he could almost guess the purpose of Tang Jianyu's visit. Tang Jianyu's expression instantly became extremely serious as he said solemnly, Sir, according to our intelligence, Zhao Tianlin will arrive at Kang City today. Wang Yi was not surprised. As expected, Zhao Tianlin was coming to Kang City. It would be a real surprise if he did not come after that humiliation. However, Tang Jianyu's words did not stop there. His expression became even more solemn. But sir, you must be careful. Zhao Tianlin has come to Kang City on a supremacy order as a battle supervisor. After saying that, he sighed in his heart. They were already doomed with the arrival of Zhao Tianlin, but he just had to come on the orders of the supremacy. Although Sir was extremely powerful and terrifying, he was probably helpless against the supremacy order. After all, who would dare to rashly disobey the orders of a godlike figure? Upon seeing the other party's cautious look, Wang Yi was a little confused. He could not help but ask in confusion, the supremacy order? Battle supervisor. Tang Jianyu instantly reacted and knew that Wang Yi definitely did not understand. He hurriedly explained, Lord, the supremacy order is an order issued by the supremacy of Langya County, who protects the county. Meanwhile, the title of supremacy represents the Khanate realm. It's an honorific used to refer to Khanate realm experts. After saying this, Tang Jianyu carefully stole a glance at Wang Yi. However, he realized that Wang Yi did not look shocked or afraid. Instead, he was still listening with relish. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, is this person really so bold, or does he really have the confidence or a trump card? However, it was the supremacy who protected Langya County. He was the only Khanate supremacy in the vast Langya County. What kind of confidence did Wang Yi have to be indifferent to such an existence? Tang Jianyu couldn't figure it out, but he didn't have the time to think about it. He continued, as for the role of battle supervisor, they are sent by Langya County City to help defend the respective giant cities when they are in danger. Now that countless beasts have gathered outside the giant cities, it can barely be considered a crisis. Quote, it's probably because of this that Zhao Tianlin received the supremacy order and came to Kang City to be a battle supervisor. However, something doesn't seem right. For a huge city like Kang City, where the Guardian is a rank 8 Grandmaster, they will usually send a rank 8 Grandmaster over. I wonder why they sent a rank 7 Grandmaster like Zhao Tianlin. Although Tang Jianyu did not understand this, Wang Yi knew very well that when that wisp of spiritual power was awakened a few days ago, Zhao Tianlin had just broken through. However, he did not expect this guy to be so careful. He even received a so-called supremacy order as a life-saving talisman. At this moment, Wang Yi still had a look of realization on his face. Back then, he really did not know anything else. However, now that he knew, he didn't really care. Zhao Tianlin had to die. This was already confirmed. No one could stop him, including the so-called Khanate supremacy. Moreover, Wang Yi, who had already broken through to level 12 of all 4 cultivation techniques, might not necessarily be afraid of the so-called Khanate supremacy. If there was a chance, he even wanted to try using his techniques on such an expert. Faced with Wang Yi's calmness, Tang Jianyu no longer knew what to say. He could only ask helplessly, Sir, what should we do next? Wang Yi only shrugged and said indifferently, there's no next step. If Zhao Tianlin comes, just beat him to death. How about it? Is Grandmaster Tang interested in making a trip to the Su family with me? What else could Tang Jianyu say? He could only agree. Of course, I'm willing to make this trip with you. In the Su family's villa, Mr. Su, Mrs. Su, and Su Xia had gathered in the living room again. The three of them looked at each other. For some reason, the Guardian's residents had suddenly informed them to go home and wait. It had been a few hours now and no one had come. The three of them were getting anxious. Their thoughts were running wild. Li Langxin finally couldn't take it anymore. She stood up and paced around the living room, her face filled with anxiety. What's with the Guardian residents? They called all of us back but left us hanging here. It's like they don't care about us at all. Could it be that the Guardian is prepared to go back on his word and ignore the Su family? At this point, Li Langxin's face instantly turned extremely pale. There was no trace of color on her face. Su Changdelin was worried, but as the pillar of the family, he didn't show it. He comforted his flustered wife in a deep voice. Langxin, don't think about it blindly. It'll be fine. What kind of person is the Guardian? Why would he do such a thing to small fries like us? After all, Su Xia had also cultivated in the Taoist temple for a year and had already become a rank 1 martial artist. Thus, she was quite calm at this moment. She comforted, "Mom, maybe something happened in the guardian's residence. Someone might come later." Bang, bang, bang. As soon as she said that, there was a knock on the door of the villa. The three of them looked delighted at the same time. Someone had really come. No matter what the outcome, at least there was no need to guess. This endless waiting was the most tortuous. As the door opened, the three members of the Su family were stunned on the spot, their faces filled with disbelief. Su Xia looked at the two people outside the door and her eyes couldn't help but turn red. Two streams of tears slid down her flawless cheeks and into her thin lips, but she didn't seem to notice. She reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch the person in front of her. However, before her hand could touch him, the emotions that she had suppressed for a long time finally erupted. She did not care if there was anyone around and directly pounced into the arms of the young man standing in front of her. She clung to him, unable to control herself any longer. She burst into tears as if to release all the pent-up grief and longing. Wang Yi stood at the entrance of the villa as he felt the warm and fragrant woman in his arms. He looked at the beautiful woman who looked like an immortal and couldn't help but stand there in a daze. Even though Wang Yi had lived 2 lives, he had never felt this way before. Even though he was extremely powerful, he could not treat her with a normal attitude. Actually, when he saw Su Xia, Wang Yi felt extremely complicated. He had completely inherited his former master's feelings. When he saw the other party, the explosion of emotions in his heart could not be faked. However, Su Xia was also a complete stranger to him, a person who only existed in his memories. For a moment, Wang Yi did not know how to face Su Xia. Only when the cute girl in his arms stopped crying did she remember that there were still many people around them. She hurriedly broke free from Wang Yi's embrace and lowered her head with a flushed face. Her voice was a little shy as she asked softly, "Yi, didn't you go to another city? Why did you suddenly come back?" Her words were filled with tenderness, and she was no longer as cold as before. Meanwhile, Wang Yi looked at the stunningly beautiful woman in front of him, whose eyes were filled with happiness. He hesitated and struggled. After all, he was no longer the Wang Yi of the past. In the end, he let out a long sigh. "Xia, do you know that the me of today is no longer the me from yesterday?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Xia was like a frightened rabbit. Panic flashed across her beautiful face as she hugged Wang Yi's arm. "Yi, listen to me. There's really nothing between me and that person. At that time, I was just acting for you to see. After you left, I let him leave." Wang Yi did not expect that what Su Xia cared about the most at this moment was to explain the incident at the hotel. Upon looking at the other party's nervous expression, Wang Yi wished he could slap himself hard. Damn, was he still a man? What was there to worry about? Didn't he once say that there was only Wang Yi here, and that he was Wang Yi? Didn't he say that from now on, what the other party protected was what he would protect, and that what the other party cherished was what he would cherish? But at this critical moment, why did he back down? How could he back down? At the thought of this, Wang Yi seemed to have unlocked a shackle in his heart. Without hesitation, he pulled the peerless beauty into his arms and said softly, "I'm not stupid. How could? I didn't know that you were acting. Don't worry, after today, all bad things will come to an end." Su Xia said nothing, but her face was full of happiness as she leaned her head on Wang Yi's shoulder. After Su Xia calmed down, Wang Yi turned to Mr. Su and Mrs. Su. He bowed deeply and called out respectfully, "Dad, Mom." At this moment, the two elders were also filled with relief. Since Wang Yi had already appeared here, there was no need to investigate why he did not go to another city. Poor parents, they really didn't want much. They just wanted their daughter to be safe and happy. Seeing the happiness in their daughter's eyes and the love in their son-in-law's eyes, the two of them said with red eyes and choked sobs, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." After a while, their emotions had all stabilized. Only then did the three members of the Su family realize that the person standing behind Wang Yi was actually the director of finance, Tang Zhenyu. This was a big shot, a true higher-up of Kang City. He was the kind of existence that could decide the prosperity and decline of a family like the Su family with a word. Moreover, this person was a Grandmaster realm expert. At this moment, Kang City was in an uproar because of this person. The director of finance, Tang Zhenyu, had successfully broken through to the Grandmaster realm a few days ago and became the second Grandmaster expert in Kang City after Fang Yuan. However, why was such an existence following behind Wang Yi like a servant? Although they didn't understand, they still didn't forget the proper etiquette. The three of them hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, Grandmaster Tang." Although Tang Zhenyu was the director of finance, he was also a Grandmaster. As a Grandmaster, they addressed him as a Grandmaster. Of course, the Guardian was different. The Guardian represented the combat power of a Grandmaster, so there was no need to be so particular when addressing him. Meanwhile, Tang Zhenyu was definitely a smart person. When Wang Yi brought him to the Su family, he already understood that Wang Yi was no longer prepared to hide his identity. The identities of the three Su family members were extremely high and noble. Su Xia was the dignified wife of a Grandmaster, while Mr. Su and Mrs. Su were the father-in-law and mother-in-law of a Grandmaster. No one could afford to offend them. Moreover, Wang Yi had the terrifying strength to kill a rank 9 Grandmaster with a wave of his hand. Who would dare to treat him as an ordinary Grandmaster? When faced with the three of them, he simply dodged to the side like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. What a joke! Did he dare to accept this greeting? More accurately, did he have the right to? Tang Zhenyu didn't feel any pressure hiding, but the three members of the Su family were terrified. They thought that they had offended Tang Zhenyu in some way. Helpless, Su Chang'an could only bite the bullet and say, "Grandmaster Tang, what's wrong? What did our Su family do wrong to make Grandmaster Tang unhappy?" Tang Zhenyu did not answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at Wang Yi to see if he had any instructions. At this moment, Wang Yi simply walked forward and said, "Don't mind him. That's how he is." Tang Zhenyu nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Yes, I'm sorry to have made you laugh." At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Perhaps after today, the Su family would truly soar. As for Zhao Tianlin, although he came on a supremacy order, he could only protect his life in front of this person. He had no chance of dealing with the Su family. Moreover, it seemed like Wang Yi had never thought of letting Zhao Tianlin off. The three people from the Su family were puzzled. They didn't know what was wrong with this director, who was a Grandmaster rank expert, but they quickly led him into the house. "Grandmaster Tang, please come in. Please come in, don't stand outside." After a few of them sat down in the living room, only Wang Yi and Su Xia's voices could be heard in the huge room. They were constantly telling each other how much they missed each other. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little strange. Mr. Su and Mrs. Su were fine, but Tang Zhenyu was extremely awkward. He couldn't leave or stay. Meanwhile, in the endless wilderness, there were clearly many more beasts than usual. At this moment, a group of people was heading towards Kang City. From the looks of it, there were more than 100 people in the group. Other than the leader, all of them were actually martial artists who were at the battle warrior rank. Even the weakest one had the strength of a rank 4 martial artist. Meanwhile, the area hundreds of kilometers around the group seemed to have become a vacuum. There was actually not a single beast around. Although low-leveled beasts did not have high intelligence, their perception of danger far exceeded that of humans, so they did not dare to approach the group at all. Zhao Tianlin looked at Kang City, whose outline could already be seen in the distance, and his heart became even more restless. A hint of killing intent flashed across the corners of his eyes. "Father, soon, the enemy who harmed you is about to apologize to you." At this moment, someone suddenly ran over from Kang City. The person seemed to be in a hurry. When he arrived in front of Zhao Tianlin, he was already panting and his clothes were drenched in sweat. However, that person couldn't care less. He said anxiously, "Sir, the Su family has already gathered at the Su family's villa. The new Grand Master of Kang City, Tang Zhenyu, and a person suspected to be the son-in-law of the Su family, Wang Yi, also went to the Su family's villa. It's very likely that there are already 2 Grand Masters in the Su family. How should we deal with them?" The person who spoke was the intelligence officer of the Martial Wind Bureau who had offended Zhao Tianlin previously. During this trip to Kang City, he was afraid that something would happen to his intelligence again, so he might as well enter the city in advance to collect information. Hearing the other party's words, not only was Zhao Tianlin not nervous, but he even flashed a cold smile. Previously, even if he had advanced to rank 8, it would have been a little difficult for him to deal with 2 rank 7 Grandmasters. If the Grandmasters were determined to protect the Su family, he might not be able to touch them. However, it was different now. He had come with the supremacy order. After entering the city, he would directly charge the Su family with colluding with the beasts. At that time, they would see who would still dare to stand up for them. At the thought of this, Zhao Tianlin suddenly laughed out loud. The intelligence officer couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. He wondered if this lord had been provoked. After laughing, Zhao Tianlin waved his hand and ignored the intelligence officer. He said loudly, "The target is Kang City. Advance at full speed." When the crowd heard the order, they followed Zhao Tianlin without any hesitation and sped toward Kang City. Only the intelligence officer looked a little bitter. He endured the fatigue on his body and gritted his teeth as he followed. Outside the Guardian's residence, Zhao Tianlin and the others looked at the young man at the entrance of the residence and could not help but frown. "We came to Kang City to supervise the battle under the supremacy order. Why did the Guardian refuse to see us?" In the crowd, a battle warrior rank powerhouse with a huge axe on his back asked unhappily. Fang Mings looked at the group of people below and knew that the leader should be Zhao Tianlin. Tang Zhenyu had already informed him that Zhao Tianlin would be coming today. He had already followed Wang Yi to the Su family's residence to wait. Fang Mings originally wanted to wake up Fang Yuan, who was still in seclusion. At this moment, the Guardian's residence had to stand on Wang Yi's side. However, Wang Yi seemed to know what Fang Mings was planning and asked Tang Zhenyu to tell him not to alarm his father. After all, it was just a small matter. Fang Mings also thought about it again and again. He knew that it was not easy for his father to seize this opportunity to break through. If he rashly woke him up, he might never have such an opportunity again. However, just because his father wasn't coming out of seclusion didn't mean the Guardian's residence wouldn't send someone to see Zhao Tianlin. Fang Mings cupped his fists and said calmly to the crowd, "I'm sorry, my father is currently in seclusion to break through to rank -8. Please forgive him for not being able to receive you. All the official duties in Kang City are now under the jurisdiction of Grandmaster Tang Zhenyu. Everyone, if you have any official matters to attend to, please go to the Department of Finance and contact Grandmaster Tang." After Fang Mings said this, Zhao Tianlin frowned again. If the other party was not lying, he could not blame the Guardian's residents for being rude. Even at such a critical moment, unless Kang City was in danger of being destroyed, no one could say anything if he didn't come out of seclusion. Thus, even if he came with the supremacy order, it wouldn't do. If he rashly interrupted a Grandmaster's breakthrough and caused the other party to fail, it would probably become an irreconcilable feud. Although Zhao Tianlin knew this well, he was still upset. He had originally come in high spirits, but he didn't expect to encounter this tactful rejection right after entering Kang City. "Sorry for disturbing you." Zhao Tianlin was a little helpless. He also cupped his fists at Fang Mings and waved behind him. "Let's go to the Department of Finance." Then, the group of people headed for the Department of Finance in a vast and mighty manner. Upon seeing the other party leave, Fang Mings led a few battle warrior rank martial artists in the residence toward the Su family. Outside the Department of Finance, Zhao Tianlin's expression was extremely ugly at this moment. It was so dark that it seemed as if water could drip from it. He stared at the person in front of him who looked like a secretary, gritted his teeth, and said word by word, "Say it again." "What did Tang Zhenyu say?" The secretary's smile did not change. She bowed and said, "Sir, the director said that he will definitely protect the Su family. If you're not convinced, you can go to the Su family now. The director is waiting for you at the Su family." Zhao Tianlin was already furious. A sinister smile couldn't help but appear on his face. Good job, new Grandmaster Tang Zhenyu. I'll go and find you now." At this moment, his hatred for Tang Zhenyu had far exceeded his hatred for Wang Yi. With that, Zhao Tianlin flicked his sleeve and led a group of battle warrior rank experts toward the Su family. At this moment, there were a few more people in the Su family's living room. The sofa was obviously not enough. Other than Fang Mings, who sat down next to Tang Zhenyu, the other battle warrior rank martial artists could only stand behind the two of them. At this moment, the corners of Mr. Su and Mrs. Su's eyes twitched wildly, and their hearts were in turmoil. They all knew the visitors. They were definitely the kind of people who could cause an earthquake in Kang City with a stomp of their feet. The few people present could almost decide the fate of the entire Kang City. However, so many big shots had actually gathered at the Su family at this time. How could they not be shocked? Most importantly, so many big shots were especially respectful to an ordinary person like Wang Yi. How was this possible? After all, they knew Wang Yi best. If not for the fact that he had worked at the tooling dojo, there might not even be a martial artist in his social circle, let alone these big shots. Although Mr. Su and Mrs. Su were suspicious, there were so many people present and they could not ask. They could only feel anxious. Perhaps only Tang Zhenyu was the happiest at this moment. He looked at Fang Ming's as if he was looking at his savior. He was finally not alone in his embarrassment. Now that Fang Ming's was sitting there, his constipated expression was as awkward as Tang Zhenyu. Among everyone, only Wang Yi and Su Xia were not affected. They were still flirting with each other. Just as everyone was about to be unable to stand the atmosphere, Wang Yi suddenly stood up and looked into the distance through the closed door. Then, he said with a faint smile, "There's a new guest coming." The moment he finished speaking, everyone in the living room turned to look at the front door. Fang Ming's and Tang Zhenyu both knew who the so-called guest Wang Yi was referring to. They looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. They had to stand on Wang Yi's side at all costs, even if it meant violating the supremacy order. Meanwhile, the three members of the Su family looked at the silent door and could not help but wonder where the guests would come from. People of the Su family, come out and die. However, in the next moment, a roar came from the courtyard. Some cups, mirrors, and other fragile items were directly shattered. Even Fang Ming's, a rank 4 battle warrior expert, subconsciously covered his ears. However, Mr. Su and Mrs. Su, as well as Su Xia, who was only a rank 1 martial artist, were not affected at all. Just as the roar sounded, a golden barrier that could not be seen by the naked eye instantly appeared on the three of them. It was as if a golden bell was glowing with golden light, protecting the three of them. Even though they were unaffected, they could hear the voice very clearly. The people outside were actually here to cause trouble for the Su family. The only enemy the Su family had recently provoked was Zhao Tianlin. Without even thinking, they could guess who was outside. It was Grandmaster Zhao Tianlin. The faces of the three Su family members instantly turned extremely pale. Wang Yi could clearly feel that Su Xia's body was trembling uncontrollably. Clearly, she was extremely afraid. However, to his surprise, Su Xia, who was already so afraid, did not hesitate to protect him. "Yi, leave quickly through the back door. We can't afford to offend that person." She spoke very quickly and anxiously. Her voice was mixed with an indescribable panic. At the next moment, Mr. Su and Mrs. Su also stood in front of Wang Yi and said with ugly expressions, "Yes. Yi, if you leave from the back door any later, it will be too late. After you escape, leave Kang City and go as far away as possible. Find a giant city and live the rest of your life in seclusion. Don't let anyone discover your identity." After being embarrassed for a long time, Fang Ming's knew that his chance to perform had come. He hurriedly went forward and said seriously, "Don't worry, the guest is just a grandmaster. The guardian's residence can still take it. Besides, Grandmaster Tang is also here. How can we let Zhao Tianlin be fierce?" After saying that, he gestured to Tang Zhenyu, who was standing at the side. Tang Zhenyu hurriedly said, "Don't worry, with us here, we will definitely be able to ensure your safety." At this moment, the expressions of the three Su family members improved, but they were still a little worried. After all, the enemy was a grandmaster. At this moment, a huge wave appeared in Wang Yi's heart. A monstrous killing intent surged in his heart like a volcano that was about to erupt. He could no longer suppress it. Wang Yi gently held Su Xia's hand and pulled her behind him. Seeing the lingering panic on her beautiful face, he couldn't help but comfort her gently. "Don't be afraid, I'm here for you." Then, he turned around and his expression instantly turned incomparably cold. His voice seemed to come from the depths of hell as he said coldly, "Let's go. Follow me to see why Zhao Tianlin is so arrogant." The cold killing intent in his voice made Fang Ming's, Tang Zhenyu, and the few battle warrior rank martial artists shiver. They looked at the confident and domineering man in front of them. Su Xia felt that Wang Yi had become a different person. He was no longer as honest as before, nor did he have that inexplicable sense of inferiority. However, wasn't this better? Although she was in a crisis, Su Xia couldn't help but smile charmingly. Meanwhile, Zhao Tianlin looked at Wang Yi and the others, who pushed the door open, and sneered. Indeed, it was not that destiny brought enemies together. Instead, all of his enemies were already here. Before anyone on Wang Yi's side could speak, Zhao Tianlin took the initiative. He roared angrily, "Tang Zhenyu, do you know your crime? When the beasts were besieging the city, as a Grandmaster expert, you didn't think about how to protect Kang City. Instead, you cooperated with this family that betrayed the human race and conspired with the beasts. Are you going to betray Kang City, betray Langya County City, and betray us, humans?" The furious roar spread far and wide with the Su family villa as the center. Hearing that the other party was calling his name, Tang Zhenyu didn't hold back. He took a step forward and retorted, "Zhao Tianlin, you're so impressive. You're already putting such a big label on me. When I fought the beasts and shed blood for the human race, you were still pissing and playing with mud. Who do you think you are? What evidence do you have? How dare you frame me here?" Zhao Tianlin was simply stunned by the scolding. He had expected Tang Zhenyu to defend himself and be angry, but he had never expected Tang Zhenyu to scold him directly. He was a Grandmaster realm expert and had never been insulted like this. Moreover, he was here under the Supremacy Order and represented the face of the Khanate Supremacy. Meanwhile, Tang Zhenyu was just a newly promoted Grandmaster. How could he dare to do this? Zhao Tianlin was also angered by the scolding. The pressure of a rank 8 expert immediately rose from his body, as if it had materialized and suppressed the other party. Wang Yi simply stood in front of everyone and a red light surged out from his body, enveloping everyone behind him. Actually, Wang Yi knew very well that other than himself, no one else could deal with the rank 8 Zhao Tianlin. When Zhao Tianlin's terrifying pressure came into contact with the red light, it was as if ice and snow had met a scorching sun. The pressure from Zhao Tianlin instantly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Zhao Tianlin looked at Wang Yi, who had easily blocked his pressure. His eyelids twitched uncontrollably, and his pupils were filled with deep fear. This seemed to be an ordinary explosive pressure, but it was actually a secret spiritual technique. He could use his spiritual power to guide his pressure and directly suppress the enemy's spiritual sea. If one's strength was insufficient, just this strike would probably break through their spiritual sea and turn them into a living dead with no consciousness. Of course, although Zhao Tianlin felt dread, he was not afraid. It was true that the other party could block his secret technique, but according to the previous explosion of his spiritual power, the other party was only a rank 7 Grandmaster. His strength was comparable to Tang Zhenyu, but he was only slightly stronger. Two rank 7 Grandmasters were indeed not easy to deal with, but with his strength as a rank 8 Grandmaster, he was really not afraid. Of course, what Zhao Tianlin did not know was that the wisp of spiritual power was casually left behind by Wang Yi. If the burly man had not met Zhao Tianlin and caused Wang Yi's will in the wisp of spiritual power to be awakened, Wang Yi would have long forgotten about it. Zhao Tianlin suddenly condensed a spear that was completely formed by a cyclone in his hand. Terrifying spiritual power and true qi constantly swirled around it. Then, he stared at Wang Yi and Tang Zhenyu and sneered with a ferocious expression. Since you guys insist on protecting a family that has betrayed the human race, don't blame me for being impolite." With that, Zhao Tianlin charged toward Wang Yi and the others with his spear. Boom! At this moment, an extremely powerful aura rose from the Guardian's residence, which was at the center of Kang City, more than 10 kilometers away from the Su family's villa. The Guardian's residence seemed to have transformed into an ancient teoti that opened its mouth and crazily devoured the surrounding spiritual energy. Even the Su family's villa, which was more than 10 kilometers away, could clearly feel the violent fluctuations of spiritual energy. Before Zhao Tianlin's cyclone spear could touch Wang Yi and the others, it stopped on the spot. Then, Zhao Tianlin turned around in surprise and looked in the direction of the Guardian's residence. He could feel that there were traces of spiritual power mixed in that powerful aura. It was like a divine dragon that was gradually waking up and could soar into the sky at any time. It could be said that when some people were happy, others would be sad. At this moment, Zhao Tianlin's expression was extremely ugly. Without even thinking, the owner of this terrifying aura was definitely the guardian of Kang City, Fang Yuan. Otherwise, how could there be so many Grandmasters in the small Kang City? As for Fang Ming's and Tang Zhenyu, their faces were filled with joy. He had broken through. Fang Yuan had broken through. It was really too timely. No one expected that Fang Yuan, who had been in seclusion, would actually make a successful breakthrough at this moment. In the spiritual perception of a Grandmaster realm expert, that wave of aura was as dazzling as the scorching sun in the night. However, at the next moment, that aura instantly disappeared from the Guardian's residence. It seemed to have turned into a bolt of lightning as it flew toward the Su family's villa. Upon seeing this, Zhao Tianlin clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. Veins popped out and his expression turned extremely ugly. When he arrived at the Su family's villa, he had already discovered that the young man in the crowd was the person who had stopped him at the entrance of the Guardian's residence. However, in order not to cause any more trouble and provoke the Guardian's residence, he deliberately ignored the other party. However, he did not expect the Guardian's residence to still participate in the end. At this moment, he already knew that it would be difficult to complete today's mission. Almost instantly, the owner of that aura appeared in the courtyard. The moment that person appeared, the battle warrior rank martial artists on Zhao Tianlin's side could not help but retreat to the side and make way. Even Zhao Tianlin subconsciously dodged. When Fang Ming saw who it was, the ecstasy on his face never left. Coincidentally, before Fang Ming's came to the Su family's villa, he had taken precautions. He told the old butler, Uncle Wu, that if his father could come out of seclusion, he should quickly come to the Su family's villa to support him. This was because Zhao Tianlin had already come knocking on their doors. However, he never expected that his father would really break through to rank 8 at this critical moment. Fang Yuan simply ignored everyone, including Zhao Tianlin, who was a rank 8 grandmaster. He walked straight toward Wang Yi. Arriving in front of Wang Yi, Fang Yuan cupped his fists and bowed deeply. He said respectfully, "Greetings, sir." The others were still fine, but the 3 members of the Su family could not accept it. They were so shocked that their mouths were agape. They looked at Wang Yi as if they did not know him. How could they not know Fang Yuan? He was the guardian, the strongest expert, and ruler of Kang City. Why was such a big shot so respectful to an ordinary person like Wang Yi? Looking at Wang Yi, who was standing with his hands behind his back and looking calm and confident, Su Xia suddenly felt uneasy. It felt as if something important was leaving her. Thus, she hurriedly reached out and held Wang Yi's hand. "Yi, what's going on?" Wang Yi did not answer. Instead, he rubbed her head lovingly and said with a smile, "After we resolve this problem, I'll tell you in detail later." Then, he turned around and looked at Fang Yuan, whose aura was still a little unstable. He said indifferently, "Not bad. You're already a rank 8 expert." Upon hearing this, Fang Yuan bowed again and said gratefully, "Thank you for your guidance, sir. That's why I had the opportunity to break through." At this moment, Zhao Tianlin, who had been ignored, finally couldn't take it anymore. He spoke with a dark expression. "Guardian Fang, what do you mean? Are you also prepared to protect a family that had betrayed the human race and conspired with the beasts?" It was only at this moment that Fang Yuan looked at the chief of the Langya County City Martial Wind Bureau for the first time. He was the battle supervisor with a supremacy order. Then, a trace of disdain flashed across Fang Yuan's face as he shouted angrily, "Shut up! Who do you think you are, Zhao Tianlin? What evidence do you have? What right do you have to slander my family?" At this moment, the anger in Zhao Tianlin's heart was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He could no longer suppress it. Pointing at Fang Yuan, he could not help but laugh in anger. "Good, good. I'll let you, Fang Yuan, see if I have the right to do so. If I say that the Su family is a traitor, then the Su family is a traitor. My words are my evidence." After saying that, he took out a scroll and shouted, "The supremacy order is here. Guardian Fang Yuan, listen up. The Su family colluded with the beasts and betrayed the human race. Now that the evidence is conclusive, quickly take down the 4 Su family members." At this moment, the red seal on the scroll suddenly became illusory. It emitted wisps of pressure as if it was about to condense into a human figure in the void. Upon seeing this, Zhao Tianlin held the scroll in his hand and looked at Fang Yuan with a sinister smile. He said provocatively, "Guardian Fang, I wonder if I'm qualified now." Then, Zhao Tianlin pointed at the 3 people from the Su family and said mockingly, "Fang Yuan, why aren't you taking down this traitor? Are you going to violate the supremacy order?" Fang Yuan's expression instantly darkened. He did not expect the other party to be so shameless. That supremacy order was just a document to appoint Zhao Tianlin as the battle supervisor of Kang City. Strictly speaking, the battle supervisor was on the same level as the guardian. He had no right to command the guardian. Moreover, the main duty of the battle supervisor was only to be in charge of the war. He had no right to ask about the internal affairs of the city. However, Zhao Tianlin was brilliant. He used the excuse that the Su family had colluded with the beasts, so he had the right to interrogate the Su family. Most importantly, Zhao Tianlin came because the beasts had surrounded the city. Although the two of them were on the same level, when it came to matters concerning the beasts, Zhao Tianlin had the right to command the guardian with the supremacy order. Oh, is your confidence based on that? However, before Fang Yuan could react, Wang Yi's slightly teasing voice sounded. At this moment, Zhao Tianlin's gaze also shifted from Fang Yuan to Wang Yi. When Zhao Tianlin saw Wang Yi's face, Zhao Tianlin's suppressed anger rose again. How could he forget this face? A few days ago, the owner of this face had blown up the Martial Wind Bureau and embarrassed him in front of his subordinates. More importantly, the commander had even seen his sorry state. One could consider this as a case of new grievances piling on the old. Zhao Tianlin raised the scroll in his hand and shouted sternly, "How dare you, Wang Yi? The Su family has colluded with the beast race and actually dares to contradict me here. I advise you to surrender and return to assist me in my investigation. Otherwise, the outcome of disobeying the supremacy order is not something a mere rank 7 grandmaster like you can withstand." Wang Yi looked at Zhao Tianlin's performance as if he was watching a clown. When Zhao Tianlin finished speaking, Wang Yi said calmly, "Are you done?" Without waiting for Zhao Tianlin's answer, he simply stretched out his palm and waved at the scroll. Zhao Tianlin felt a huge force suddenly coming from the supremacy order in his hand as if it wanted to break free from his palm. He was so frightened that he hurriedly held the supremacy order tightly with both hands. However, what was terrifying was that even with his strength as a rank 8 grandmaster, he actually could not hold the supremacy order in his hand. Bang, bang, bang. Under Zhao Tianlin's horrified gaze, his 10 fingers that were holding the supremacy order were repelled by a terrifying force. Then, the supremacy order instantly broke free and flew toward Wang Yi. Zhao Tianlin never expected that even with his strength as a rank 8 grandmaster, he would be unable to resist Wang Yi at all. Then, as if he had lost his mind, he pointed at Wang Yi and shouted hysterically, "Impossible! This is impossible! You're only a rank 7 grandmaster. How can you be so strong?" Wang Yi shook his head slightly and ignored him for the time being. Instead, he looked at the scroll. The scroll that flew towards Wang Yi seemed to suddenly possess an inexplicable power. It broke free from Wang Yi's control and floated in midair, flickering with a faint light. Wang Yi looked at the floating scroll and could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Although he did not use much strength, it was impossible for anyone below the Grandmaster realm to break free from his grip. Unexpectedly, the scroll could resist Wang Yi's power with just a wisp of spiritual will attached to it. The strength of its owner was obvious. Perhaps only the Konate expert of Langya County City could do it. However, the scroll suddenly trembled violently in the next moment as if it was slowly being unfolded in midair by a pair of invisible hands. The red seal on it instantly turned into red mist and left the scroll. Then, the red mist slowly gathered in the air, and a terrifying figure more than 1,000 meters tall stood on the scroll that had already been spread out. Haha, so what if your strength is monstrous? Now that the will of the supremacy has appeared, do you still dare to resist? I advise everyone to surrender. Otherwise, the supremacy's anger is not something you can withstand. When the 1,000-meter tall figure appeared, Zhao Tianlin seemed to have found a supporter and started shouting crazily. You're too noisy. Looking at Zhao Tianlin, who was dancing happily, Wang Yi was a little unhappy. He snorted coldly and slapped down. Ah! Zhao Tianlin only had time to scream before he was slapped to the ground. Only his eyes were still exposed, filled with fear. The moment Wang Yi made his move, the figure suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if 2 bolts of lightning had flashed past and swept towards Wang Yi and the others. The figure was like a high and mighty god looking down on the mortal world without any emotions. At the same time, a vast pressure rose from the figure and suppressed everyone. This pressure alone could probably suppress all martial artists below rank 9. Wang Yi frowned slightly. The power of the 9 Suns' divine art in his body trembled. Then, a special fluctuation traveled through the air and directly oscillated toward the pressure. The moment the 2 forces came into contact with each other, electric arcs suddenly appeared in the void, and a loud sound was produced. Then, the pressure was directly dissipated by the force of the fluctuation. The figure seemed to sense that his dignity had been provoked. He suddenly snorted coldly and his aura rose again. He stared at the person who dared to disobey him and shouted coldly, "Kneel." Then, That cold shout echoed throughout the entire courtyard. Kneel, kneel, kneel. Wang Yi's expression suddenly turned cold. He pointed at the huge figure and cursed, I gave you enough face, didn't I? If you were actually here, I might be a little afraid of you. However, a wisp of your spiritual will actually dare to be arrogant here. With that, a dazzling golden light suddenly erupted from Wang Yi's body and gathered in front of him, forming a golden flying dagger that was the size of his palm. Then, the golden flying dagger instantly disappeared on the spot, as if it had entered an unknown space. When it appeared again, it was already beside the scroll. The golden flying dagger seemed to be held by someone. It was raised high and slashed at the scroll. At the same time, a 1,000-meter-long flying dagger shadow suddenly condensed behind the flying dagger. It was like a peerless divine weapon that lay between heaven and earth. The moment the golden flying dagger hit the scroll, the 1,000-meter-long flying dagger phantom also moved and slashed at the huge floating figure. Rip. As the scroll was slashed apart, the peerless and huge god-like figure was also reduced to ashes by the flying dagger phantom without any resistance. Only a red powdery substance was left, scattered on the ground by the wind. Just as the huge figure was destroyed, in a vast palace in Langya County City, a beautiful woman in a white training suit suddenly woke up from her cultivation state. A strange look flashed across her eyes, and she couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, what a sharp saber. It could actually cut off a wisp of my spiritual will. I actually didn't know that such a powerhouse had appeared in Langya County. Then, the woman shook her head slightly and sighed. Unfortunately, I can't leave yet. Otherwise, I definitely have to meet such a powerhouse. Meanwhile, Wang Yi stood on the spot and stretched out his hand again. Without the support of a connate expert's spiritual will, the scroll that had been cut in half was no longer as powerful as before. Thus, Wang Yi grabbed it without any obstruction. Wang Yi sized up the scroll in his hand. There were still some blurry marks where the red seal had been. Upon closer inspection, the marks seemed to spell out the words, Supremacy Ning Jing. Even after the figure was destroyed, and the golden flying dagger and phantom fused back into Wang Yi's body, everyone was still in a daze. They could not believe what they were seeing. Mr. Su and Mrs. Su looked at Wang Yi as if they didn't know him anymore. They observed him, full of shock. Su Xia subconsciously hugged Wang Yi's arm tightly and lowered her head. She pursed her lips tightly and did not say a word. Perhaps only the few grandmasters present had the most complicated feelings. After all, the more they knew, the more afraid they were. That was the spiritual will of a connate supremacy, but it was extinguished by this person just like that. Just how much strength was needed to do this? However, as long as he did it, it would be equivalent to directly offending a connate supremacy. At this moment, Zhao Tianlin seemed to be in a daze. His eyes were unfocused as he muttered in a daze, impossible. This is impossible. How could the invincible incarnation of the supremacy's spiritual will be defeated? Wang Yi looked at the group of people opposite him and shouted sternly, kneel. Although Wang Yi's figure was far inferior to the 1,000-meter-tall figure from before, his aura was not weaker at all. In fact, it was even stronger. His shout was like rolling thunder that seemed to have come from extremely far away. It instantly spread to every corner of the courtyard. The people behind Wang Yi were not affected. After all, this shout was not directed at them. However, the group of people opposite them were in trouble. More than 100 battle warrior rank martial artists could not resist this godlike roar at all. They knelt on the ground in unison. Even Zhao Tianlin, who was a rank 8 expert, felt like he was carrying a divine mountain on his back. His body could not withstand such immense pressure, and with a crack, he knelt on the ground. At this moment, Zhao Tianlin seemed to have woken up from a dream. His eyes gradually regained focus, but this was replaced by endless shock. He said with a trembling voice, who exactly are you? How dare you provoke the dignity of a supremacy like this? Wang Yi looked at him with a faint smile and couldn't help but tease him. Shouldn't you consider your life at a time like this? You actually have the mood to care about others. Zhao Tianlin, who was kneeling on the ground, didn't care how humiliating his posture was. He snorted and said, I'm the supremacy's personal battle supervisor. You dare to kill me? Wang Yi sighed and looked at Zhao Tianlin as if he was looking at an idiot. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. I dare to destroy the so-called supremacy's spiritual will, let alone a mere rank 8 grandmaster like you. After saying that, Wang Yi narrowed his eyes and cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. Then, terrifying supreme Yang Tru Qi condensed in his hand. Do you have any last words? After feeling Wang Yi's terrifying killing intent, Zhao Tianline's expression finally changed completely. He shouted in horror, "No, no, you can't kill me. If you dare to kill me, my uncle won't let you off. The supremacy won't let you off either." Wang Yi shook his head slightly. Zhao Tianline was not weak, but his personality involving his relatives and other powers if he couldn't win was similar to that of an ordinary rich kid. With the 9 suns true qi in his hand, he slowly walked toward Zhao Tianline and said indifferently, "It seems that these are your last words." Seeing that Wang Yi had directly ignored his threat and was really preparing to kill him, Zhao Tianline's face instantly turned pale. His eyes were filled with fear as he begged Fang Yuan with a trembling voice. "Guardian Fang, save me. Wang Yi doesn't know how terrifying the supremacy is, but you do. Killing the battle supervisor for no reason is equivalent to betraying the human race. The supremacy will definitely not let the perpetrator off. As the guardian of Kang City, you can't sit back and watch me be killed. At that time, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape responsibility and will also be punished by Lord Supremacy." Fang Yuan frowned slightly when he heard this. He was not concerned about the supremacy's punishment, but he was worried for Wang Yi. He knew very well that Zhao Tianline was right. If Wang Yi killed Zhao Tianline for no reason, he might really attract the supremacy to attack. The power of the supremacy was definitely not just for show. She was a terrifying existence who could guard the vast Langya County alone, protect billions of living beings, and deter the entire beast race. Although Wang Yi was strong, could he really resist such an existence? It was clearly impossible. At the thought of this, Fang Yuan's figure flashed and arrived in front of Wang Yi. He whispered, "Mr. Wang, this Zhao Tianline deserves to die, but he's right about one thing. If you kill him without a rational reason, I'm afraid you'll really attract the anger of the supremacy." At this moment, Su Xia, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "Yi, why don't we let him go? With you around, I don't think he will dare to harm us again." Although Su Xia did not know what kind of existence the supremacy was, she could tell from Fang Yuan's words that the supremacy was definitely a very powerful being. Even though Su Xia wished that Zhao Tianline would die, she did not want Wang Yi to provoke a powerful enemy just because of Zhao Tianline. Mr. Su and Mrs. Su also walked up at this moment. Although they were extremely unwilling, they also echoed Su Xia's sentiments. When Zhao Tianline saw this, he could not help but reveal a trace of joy. There was a chance. Perhaps he really had a chance to escape this calamity. At the same time, he could not help but roar crazily in his heart. "Just you wait. As long as I can leave this place alive, I will definitely go back and report this to the supremacy. Then, I will make you die without a burial place." Wang Yi knew very well that the 3 members of the Su family were doing this for his own good. They were afraid that he would provoke a powerful enemy. He could not help but smile and comfort them. "It's fine. Even if that Conate expert comes personally, I might not be afraid of them. Today, Zhao Tianline will definitely die." As Wang Yi finished speaking, Fang Yuan's heart started to tremble crazily. How dare he say that he was not afraid of the supremacy? Perhaps this person was crazy and didn't know how terrifying the supremacy was. Or perhaps he could really rely on something to resist the Conate supremacy. Clearly, Wang Yi was definitely not a lunatic. The only explanation was that he was really confident in dealing with the Conate supremacy. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. What a joke. What kind of trump card and what kind of confidence did he have to deal with an invincible existence like the supremacy? In any case, Fang Yuan had never heard of it. Wang Yi nodded slightly at Fang Yuan, thanking him for his good intentions. Then, he dispersed the 9 yang true qi in his hand and came to Zhao Tianline. He asked curiously, "Actually, I'm very curious. With the Su family's status, they're not even considered a big family in Kang City. How did they provoke a grandmaster expert like you?" Upon hearing this, the 3 members of the Su family subconsciously pricked up their ears. To be honest, they were also very puzzled by this question. Zhao Tianline had always wanted to kill them all. However, they really did not know exactly how they had offended such an expert. This was because other than being constantly suppressed, they had no right to talk to each other directly. Upon hearing Wang Yi's words, Zhao Tianline seemed to have forgotten that his life and death were still in the hands of others. Hatred appeared in his eyes. The mere Su family is naturally not worthy of becoming enemies with me. However, Su Changdelin caused my uncle's death. How can I let the Su family off? I can't wait to eat their flesh and drink their blood. Before Zhao Tianlin could finish speaking, Su Chenggalin's face was filled with anger. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling as if he had been greatly wronged. He pointed at Zhao Tianlin and said, "Bullshit. I, Su Chenggalin, am a businessman. I'm usually kind to others and have never even killed a chicken. When did I ever kill your uncle?" He never expected that the Su family would almost be destroyed because of such a ridiculous reason. However, Zhao Tianlin kept sneering with a ferocious expression. "You said that you didn't kill my uncle. Then let me ask you, did you go to the Three Absolutes auction house in Langya County half a year ago?" Su Chenggalin was stunned. He did not know why a matter from half a year ago was related to this, but he immediately said, "So what if I went there half a year ago? That's still a business matter. After attending the auction, I returned to Kang City directly. During that period, I didn't interact with anyone." Seeing that the other party had admitted it, Zhao Tianlin was furious. He suddenly wanted to get up and fight Su Chenggalin to the death. However, it was as if his body was nailed to the ground. As he struggled several times, the veins on his body bulged and sweat dripped from his forehead, but he could not move at all. In the end, he could only give up struggling weakly. He stared at Su Chenggalin and said hatefully, "At the auction that day, was there anyone who competed with you for a stock of the body-restoring flower?" Su Chenggalin almost didn't think and immediately replied, "Indeed, I obtained the body-restoring flower at the auction. What does that have to do with you?" After all, he had gone to the auction for this item. After obtaining this item, he left the auction. How could he not remember it? Upon hearing Su Chenggalin's straightforward answer, Zhao Tianlin couldn't help but laugh in anger. Good, good. Then do you know that the person that competed with you was from the Martial Wind Bureau? Half a year ago, I was ordered to go out on a business trip, but my uncle suddenly fell seriously ill. No one in Langya County City could treat him. However, at that time, there was news that in the Three Absolutes auction house, there was a body-restoring flower that could cure all illnesses. Due to how sudden the incident was, as well as the fact that the Three Absolutes auction house only recognizes money and not people, the people from the Martial Wind Bureau were not prepared enough. That's why you won the bid for the body-restoring flower. My uncle died of a serious illness because he missed the chance to obtain the body-restoring flower. Tell me, didn't you cause my uncle's death?" Upon hearing this, Su Chenggalin opened his mouth but did not say anything for a long time. Could he be blamed for this? In the eyes of Su Chenggalin, the Su family, Wang Yi, and even ordinary people, this matter had absolutely nothing to do with Su Chenggalin. After all, an auction depended on one's wealth. It was normal for anything to belong to whoever had the money. However, if Su Chenggalin had such terrifying strength and knew that his closest relative was seriously ill, but the life-saving body-restoring flower was snatched away in front of his eyes, would he let go of the person who fought with him for the body-restoring flower and caused his loved one to die? No one could explain such a thing that did not happen to them. Meanwhile, in Wang Yi's mind, his memories were like books that were quickly flipped through. Soon, he returned to what had happened half a year ago. According to his memories, the previous owner of his body seemed to have been sick half a year ago. It was the kind of serious illness that the hospital had already issued a notice of critical illness. Thus, he could only wait for death. However, after a few days, the previous owner had inexplicably recovered without any warning. Now that he thought about it, it should be due to the so-called body-restoring flower. Wang Yi couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. It turned out that all the suffering in the Su family was caused by him. At this moment, Fang Yuan suddenly said, "Sir, this matter is not that simple. There's probably something fishy." As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you mean?" At this moment, everyone's gaze, including Zhao Tianlin's, landed on Fang Yuan, as if they were waiting for him to continue. Fang Yuan pondered for a moment and said directly, "Sir, do you know about this Three Absolutes auction house?" When Wang Yi heard this, he subconsciously shook his head. "I really don't know." Fang Yuan seemed to know that Wang Yi would give this answer. Then, he said again, "The Three Absolutes auction house was established by three top grandmasters. This is also where the name Three Absolutes came from. As for the Three Absolutes auction house, with the guarantee of the three top grandmasters, it's said that the identity of the customers will absolutely be confidential. This way, the guests can avoid being killed after they bid for valuable items." Even though Zhao Tianlin has already broken through to level 8, in the eyes of a top grandmaster, he's nothing. He definitely doesn't have the right to let the 3 top grandmasters ruin their reputation by making them reveal the identities of their guests. Exclamation mark. Upon hearing this, Zhao Tianlin felt that something was wrong from Fang Yuan's words almost instantly. His expression changed drastically. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Due to his desire for revenge, he had really overlooked this problem. Now that he thought about it, this matter was indeed strange. At that time, after he returned to the city and heard about his father's death, he lost control of his emotions and went straight to the door of the 3 Absolutes auction house to interrogate them about who had bid for the body-restoring flower. 1. At that time, the 3 Absolutes auction house had actually rejected Zhao Tianlin's request. Although he was very angry, he could only suppress this hatred in his heart helplessly because he was facing a super faction presided over by 3 top grandmasters. Just 2 months ago, the 3 Absolutes auction house suddenly sent him a message. They informed him that the person who had once competed with him for the body-restoring flower at the auction was a small family in Kang City. At that time, because he was on the verge of a breakthrough, he asked his subordinates to investigate the situation. According to the intelligence, Su Chengdelin, the head of the Su family, had indeed come to Langya County City to participate in the auction when the body-restoring flower was being auctioned. Furthermore, the live-in son-in-law of the Su family had also contracted a strange illness. He was already doomed, but he miraculously recovered. At that time, all the evidence pointed to Su Chengdelin and the Su family. Zhao Tianlin had already been blinded by hatred and did not think about the strangeness of this matter at all. Thus, he only wanted to kill the Su family to vent his anger. However, when he arrived with the momentum of breaking through to Rank 8, he encountered a terrifying existence like Wang Yi, who could kill the incarnation of the Supremacy's spiritual will with a single slash. Now that he thought about it, if the 3 Absolutes auction house really wanted to give his uncle some face, why didn't they reveal that the Su family had bid for the flower back then? Why did they wait for a few months instead? Obviously, there were only 2 outcomes. Perhaps they wanted to use Zhao Tianlin to get rid of the Su family. However, they didn't know that the Su family had a terrifying existence like Wang Yi. Alternatively, the 3 top grandmasters already knew of Wang Yi's existence and terrifying strength. Thus, they wanted to use Wang Yi to get rid of Zhao Tianlin. However, what Zhao Tianlin couldn't understand was that regardless of whether they wanted to kill the Su family or him, to people like the 3 top grandmasters, it would be as easy as killing an ant. Why did they have to go through so much trouble to use someone else to complete this task? Wang Yi's expression was not very good either. A hint of killing intent flashed across his eyes as he muttered softly, What role did the 3 Absolutes auction house play in this matter? This matter that involved Su family was not as simple as it seemed. If Zhao Tianlin could think of this, he could naturally think of this as well. It was absolutely impossible for the 3 Absolutes auction house to know of his existence. The only possibility was that they were here for the Su family. Since the other party could use Zhao Tianlin to kill the Su family, no one could guarantee that there was no other mastermind behind the 3 Absolutes auction house. However, what was incomprehensible was how a small family like the Su family had provoked someone of that level. Wang Yi could not help but press his palm against his forehead. He didn't expect that although the culprit, Zhao Tianlin, had arrived, he eventually realized that Zhao Tianlin was simply a knife in someone else's hand. This also made the entire matter confusing again. 2. Wang Yi felt a little frustrated. In the end, he simply sighed faintly and said, When I visit the 3 Absolutes auction house in the future, this matter will come to an end. Then, Wang Yi looked at Zhao Tianlin and said pitifully, I didn't expect you to be just a chess piece in their hands. However, you have already wanted to kill my Su family, so I naturally can't let you live. But since you're being used, I'll give you another chance to repeat your last words. Zhao Tianlin seemed to be unable to accept the fact that he had been used by others. He seemed to have gone crazy. After hearing Wang Yi's words, he repeated stiffly, You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Wang Yi shook his head helplessly. It looks like these are your last words. Try to be smart in your next life. Don't be used by others anymore. With that, Hod Nine Sun's true chi appeared in Wang Yi's hand again. It instantly transformed into a raging spiritual energy flame that smashed toward Zhao Tianlin. At this moment, clarity returned to Zhao Tianlin's eyes. He knew that he was dead for sure. His expression became incomparably crazy as he roared miserably. His voice was like rolling thunder as it spread in all directions. Don't be happy too early. If you dare to kill the Supremacy's personal battle supervisor, the Supremacy will definitely not let you off. I'll go first and wait for you in hell. Uncle, avenge me. The Three Absolutes auction house has set me up. I curse that all of you will die without a burial place. As soon as he finished speaking, the scorching spiritual energy flame devoured Zhao Tianlin. Then, it was as if he had been vaporized. Almost instantly, the person in the flames disappeared without a trace. Wang Yi pursed his lips helplessly. He knew that this person would definitely say something ruthless before he died. On a whim, he wanted to hear what new tricks Zhao Tianlin could come up with, but in the end, he was disappointed. Otherwise, with Wang Yi's strength, Zhao Tianlin would probably be burned to ashes without even a chance to fart, let alone speak so much. Everyone present looked at the place where Zhao Tianlin was kneeling and could not help but feel a little lost. This was a rank 8 Grand Master, a great being who could guard a giant city with a population of more than 100 million. However, he had actually been burned to ashes so easily. From then on, there was no trace of him in this world. The three people from the Su family had the most complicated feelings. They immediately felt their bodies lighten. The crisis that resembled the sword of Damocles hanging above their heads, causing them to count down to their deaths, had been resolved so easily. At this moment, a commotion sounded. A bunch of battle warrior rank martial artists were kneeling. Lord, please spare us. We had no idea about the grudge between Zhao Tianlin and you. Please spare our lives. Lord, we are only ordinary battle warriors of Langya County City. We were ordered to help Kang City defend against the attack of the beasts. Please let us go. Lord, Zhao Tianlin used his position for personal gain. He deserved to die. Please let us go. If you ask, we will definitely speak up for you. Looking at the noisy crowd, Wang Yi frowned slightly and was a little unhappy. He softly mumbled, quiet. Even though his voice was not very loud, it suppressed everyone else's voices and traveled directly into their ears. The entire courtyard instantly fell silent. Even the sound of breathing was almost inaudible. Wang Yi looked around at everyone and said indifferently, "Today, I'll only kill the leader. No matter what relationship you have with him, I won't pursue it anymore. With me in Kang City, there's no need to worry about the safety of the city. You guys can return to Langya County City. As for what happened today, just report it truthfully. If the Supremacy is not convinced, tell the Supremacy to come to Kang City and find me." With that, Wang Yi waved his hand gently, and the terrifying pressure that enveloped everyone instantly disappeared. The many battle warrior rank martial artists kneeling on the ground felt as if the divine mountain that was pressing down on them had been lifted. Their bodies immediately lightened and they stood up in unison. Then, they bowed to Wang Yi and said in unison, "Thank you, Lord." Wang Yi did not vent his anger on the group of battle warrior rank experts. He simply waved his hand and said, "You guys can leave." Only then did the battle warrior rank martial artists react. It was as if they received an imperial edict. They retreated until they left the courtyard before letting go and rushing out of the city. After the group of battle warrior rank martial artists in Langya County left, Wang Yi turned around. With a faint smile on his face, he said to Fang Yuan and the others, "Thank you for making this trip. Why don't you stay for a meal later?" Other than Fang Ming's, Fang Yuan and the others had all been in the government for more than 10 years. Thus, they were smart and scheming. Fang Yuan almost instantly understood what Wang Yi meant. He took a step forward, cupped his fists, and bowed. "Sir, you're too polite. It's our honor to share your burden. It's just that you're reunited with your family today, so it's not convenient for us to disturb you. When you're free in the future, we'll definitely visit again." Wang Yi nodded. Not bad, he was very observant. Then, Wang Yi smiled and said, "Then I won't keep you any longer. I'll personally cook for you next time." Just as he finished speaking, Fang Ming's and Tang Zhenyu's eyes immediately lit up as they drooled. Before Fang Yuan could speak, the two of them stood in front of him and said excitedly, "It's settled then. We'll come and disturb you another day." Nay, as soon as they finished speaking, the two of them pulled the still confused Fang Yuan out of the villa. Wang Yi shook his head helplessly, not knowing whether to laugh or cry at the two of them. Wasn't it just a meal? However, Wang Yi was still very generous to these people who were willing to stand with him at such a critical moment. Only when they walked out of the villa did Fang Yuan break free and look at the two of them unhappily. He said in a low voice, "Brother Tang, Ming's is still a child. It's fine if he's insensible, but why are you messing around too? Upon hearing this, Fang Mings and Tang Zhenyu looked at each other and suddenly laughed at the same time. Tang Zhenyu had nothing to hide and simply told Fang Yuan how he broke through to the Grandmaster realm. After hearing this, Fang Yuan still could not accept that one could actually break through to the Grandmaster realm with a dish. However, he believed the two people in front of him. He believed that they could not lie to him, so he said expectantly, "Let's go together next time. Let's go together next time." In the Su family villa, Wang Yi sat on the sofa in the living room. Meanwhile, the three members of the Su family kept sizing him up as if he was a national treasure. From time to time, they would even click their tongues. Wang Yi felt a little uncomfortable being stared at. He could only say with a frown, "Dad, Mom, Xia, why are you looking at me like that?" At this moment, Su Xia hugged his arm and said angrily, "Yi, you've been hiding it from us for so long. You're actually so powerful that I almost thought that I would never see you again in my life." As soon as she was done speaking, Su Xia became like a bullied little wife. Her eyes turned red and tears fell from her cheeks. Even when facing a Konate expert, Wang Yi would not frown. However, facing the tears of the beauty beside him, he was a little flustered. Fortunately, Wang Yi had already thought of an excuse before he came. Seeing this situation, he quickly explained. This was roughly how things went. After he left the Su family, he was a little disheartened and wanted to commit suicide. In the end, he didn't die and even saved an old man. He didn't expect that old man to be a peerless expert. However, the old man was reaching the end of his lifespan. Since the old man found Wang Yi rather pleasing to the eye, he gave Wang Yi all his strength before he died. That was why he had such great strength. Perhaps in Wang Yi's previous life, even children would not believe such a common scene. However, in this situation, the three of them were stunned. It was not that Wang Yi had to lie to them, it was just that transmigration was even more difficult to explain, and he could not talk about it either. After listening to Wang Yi's story, Su Xia stopped crying. She quickly wiped her tears and looked at Wang Yi. Her heart ached as she said, "I'm sorry." Seeing that the atmosphere was a little off, Li Langxin quickly changed the topic and said excitedly, "Rie is amazing. He's actually a Grandmaster expert. In the future, your father and I will take advantage of you and live a retirement life in advance." Of course, Li Langxin only knew that Grandmasters were very strong. As for what was above the Grandmaster realm, she did not know. Naturally, she treated Wang Yi as a Grandmaster. As the head of the family, Su Chengdelin was naturally very steady. He nodded slightly at Wang Yi and said with a smile, "Not bad." However, the pride and relief in his eyes could not be concealed. Since Wang Yi had resolved the threat of Zhao Tianlin, the pressure of death was no more. In addition, Wang Yi had suddenly become a Grandmaster. In her joy, Li Langxin personally cooked a sumptuous meal. This meal was probably the most relaxing meal the three of them had in recent times. The family was happy and harmonious. Su Chengdelin was in a good mood and dragged Wang Yi for a few more drinks. However, due to his alcohol tolerance, Su Chengdelin was soon helped back to the bedroom by Li Langxin. For a moment, only Wang Yi and Su Xia were left in the room. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Su Xia's face instantly turned red to the tips of her ears. She said shyly, "Let's go and rest too." They went back into the bedroom. Logically speaking, a man and a woman should do something when they are alone in a room. Wang Yi was not a saint, so he naturally could not control himself when a beautiful woman was in his arms. However, Wang Yi was simply too powerful. A single drop of his blood could crush the ground, and he could cut through the mountains with a single breath. On the other hand, Su Xia had just stepped into rank -1. She wouldn't be able to withstand his strength at all. Wang Yi secretly estimated that if the two of them wanted to be together, they would have to wait until Su Xia advanced to the Grandmaster realm. Upon thinking of this, Wang Yi could not help but frown. How long would he have to wait? He couldn't help but think to himself that when he signed in tomorrow, he had to get a cultivation technique suitable for Su Xia. He wanted her to cultivate and reach the Grandmaster realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, the feeling of only being able to see but not eat was too uncomfortable. Su Xia was like an inexperienced girl. In this atmosphere, she almost always blushed and lowered her head. Through the heavy breathing, Wang Yi could tell that the other party was very nervous. However, it was normal to be nervous. Wang Yi scanned through his memories and realized that the two of them had not crossed that line when they were together back then. They had been waiting for the day that they consummated their marriage. However, on the day of their wedding, Wang Yi persuaded Su Xia to follow the high-level mentors of the Taoist temple to study there. At the thought of this, Wang Yi couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. How had he let himself off so easily? Feeling helpless, Wang Yi could only hug the immortal-like woman gently and fall asleep. As for the suffering he experienced during this night, only he could understand it. Just as Wang Yi was sleeping soundly with the beauty in his arms, a huge change occurred in the endless wilderness. Thousands of miles away from Kang City, there were no signs of plant growth on the grayish-brown ground. It was as if it had not rained for many years. Huge cracks intersected everywhere. Dead silence and desolation were the main themes here. Apart from the occasional few bird-type beasts flying past in the sky, this place could basically be said to be deserted. Even beasts were unwilling to come here. At this moment, there was a ferocious beast that was several meters tall and looked like a Tugo-1. Its eyes were fixed on a drop of dried blood on the ground, and it was still sniffing it with its nose. Suddenly, the beast seemed to have discovered something. Its eyes lit up, and a human-like look of ecstasy appeared on its beast face. Then, the beast sniffed at the drop of dried blood again. After that, it aimed in a direction and suddenly rushed out. During this period, the dog-like beast always found the same dried blood in different locations. As it found more blood, its eyes grew brighter and its expression became more excited. It was not until it could vaguely see the outline of a huge city that there were no more traces of blood. When it saw the words carved on the city gate, it instantly ran in the opposite direction. In a huge valley, endless beasts gathered in what seemed to be the base camp of dire beasts. A beastmaster looked at the dog-like beast below it and asked solemnly, "Do you know the consequences of lying to me?" The dog-like beast lay on the ground and said in a trembling voice, "This matter is absolutely true. Chu Li will definitely not dare to lie to you. After I discovered the silver-winged beast king's blood in the silent desolate land, I followed it. It wasn't until I was outside a huge city called Kang City that I completely lost track of it." With that, the dog-like beast shook its head, and a reddish-brown crystal flew out of its ear. Then, it said again, "Sir, this is the blood of the silver-winged beast king." Sensing the faint pressure emitted from the reddish-brown crystal, the eyes of the beastmaster lit up. In its spiritual perception, although the blood had already dried up, the terrifying pressure contained in it could only be possessed by a rank 9 beastmaster. This beastmaster also knew the importance of the matter. It arranged for its beasts to stay where they were. Meanwhile, its huge figure turned into a bolt of lightning and headed towards Heaven-Breaking Peak. In a grand classical palace at the top of Heaven-Breaking Peak, Demon Venerable Tiandu, who was sitting cross-legged on the huge throne, suddenly snorted coldly. Space itself seemed to freeze. A terrifying aura rose from his huge figure, causing the air to explode. His cold gaze swept across the two beasts below and he said coldly, "After so long, we still haven't found Silver Wing and that human called Jinlin Guoshi. Golden Edge King, Wind-Chasing King, are you two trying to be perfunctory?" Below the throne were two beasts that were hundreds of meters tall. They also had deep and majestic auras. As Demon Venerable Tiandu finished speaking, they knelt on the ground like two frightened quails. Their heads were buried deep in the ground, and cold sweat kept dripping from their foreheads. Even with their strength as top-notch beast kings, their voices could not help but tremble when faced with the anger of a connate Demon Venerable. "Demon Venerable, we definitely won't dare to act in a perfunctory manner in front of you." However, after the incident at Heaven-Breaking Peak, the silver-winged cloud leopard never appeared again. There's really no way to investigate the matter. Upon hearing this, Demon Venerable Tiandu did not speak. Instead, he continued to stare coldly at the two huge figures below. As time passed, the atmosphere became more and more oppressive. It was as if a shocking killing intent was constantly brewing, ready to destroy the world at any moment. Just as the two top-notch beast kings were about to be unable to withstand this extreme pressure, a figure suddenly appeared in the palace and knelt on the ground. He said respectfully to the Demon Venerable Tiandu on the throne, "Lord Demon Venerable, the Camel Mountain Beast King has requested to see you. He says that he has discovered traces of the Silver-Winged Beast King." As soon as the figure finished speaking, the terrifying pressure in the entire palace instantly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. The kneeling Golden Edge King and Wind-Chasing King suddenly heaved a long sigh of relief. A hint of joy flashed across their eyes as if they had survived a calamity. On the throne, Demon Venerable Tiandu smiled and said calmly, "Let him come up." Not long after, the beast known as the Camel Mountain Beast King walked into the palace. Along the way, he almost did not dare to look up. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed behind the Golden Edge King and Wind-Chasing King. "Greetings, Lord Demon Venerable." Demon Venerable Tiandu glanced at him and asked directly, "Were you the one who discovered Silverwing's traces?" When the Camel Mountain Beast King heard this, it hurriedly took a few steps forward and said, "Lord Demon Venerable, there's a ferocious beast under my command called Chu Li. Chu Li found the blood left behind by the Silver-Winged Beast King in the silent desolate land. After that, he tracked it all the way until there was no trace of the Silver-Winged Beast King outside Kang City." As soon as the Camel Mountain Beast King finished speaking, it took out the reddish-brown crystal from before. Demon Venerable Tiandu raised his eyebrows slightly and waved his hand. The reddish-brown crystal appeared in his hand. Then, he nodded slightly and a smile appeared on his face. Not bad, it was indeed Silver-Wing's blood. He looked at the still kneeling Camel Mountain Beast King and said, "You're not bad. Get up." The Camel Mountain Beast King looked at the two top Beast Kings, who were still kneeling in front of him, and suddenly had a plan. Feeling a little guilty, he stood up and said respectfully, "I'm ashamed and don't dare to take credit. I went to the silent desolate land to investigate under the orders of Lord Golden Edge King and Lord Wind-Chasing King." Demon Venerable Tiandu swept his gaze across the two top-notch Beast Kings and nodded slightly. Then, he said, "At least you guys are meticulous. Get up. Since we've already found traces of Silver-Wing, you two kings, make a trip to Kang City and bring Silver-Wing back to me. If anyone dares to stop us, kill them without mercy." After saying that, Demon Venerable Tiandu waved his hand below. "Go. We accept the order. We will capture the traitor, Silver-Wing, and the human powerhouse, Jinling Guoshi, as soon as possible and hand them over to the Venerable." Golden Edge King and Wind-Chasing King replied almost at the same time with serious expressions. Then, they left with the Camel Mountain Beast King. Only after leaving the palace did the two top Beast Kings heave a sigh of relief. They looked at the Camel Mountain Beast King in front of them with gratitude in their eyes. The Golden Edge King smiled and said, "Camel Mountain, I still lack a commander under me. If you're interested, you can come to my side." The Camel Mountain Beast King was overjoyed. He knew that he had made the right bet. He quickly said, "I'm willing. I'm willing. Thank you for thinking highly of me, Lord." After the three beasts left, the hall immediately fell silent. Demon Venerable Tiandu looked at the corner of the hall with a deep gaze. How could he not know that what the Camel Mountain Beast King said was just an excuse to absolve the two kings? However, the two kings were his strongest subordinates and had already reached the peak realm. He was not prepared to make things too difficult for them, so he turned a blind eye to what the Camel Mountain Beast King had done. "How is it going? Are you confident that you can break through?" Demon Venerable Tiandu suddenly spoke to the air. In the corner of the hall, space seemed to ripple. Then, a huge figure suddenly appeared in the corner of the hall as if it had teleported over. The huge figure was extremely similar to the Demon Venerable Tiandu, but he was slightly smaller. "Brother, don't worry, although I don't have full confidence, I'm 70 to 80% confident." After the huge figure appeared, he spoke directly to the throne. Hearing this, a look of surprise flashed across Demon Venerable Tiandu's eyes. His heart, which was as firm as a rock, suddenly fluctuated. He looked at the other party in exhilaration and said in a slightly excited voice, 70 to 80% is enough. There's no time to lose. I'll take you to the outside of the Langya region now. You have to break through to the Demon Venerable realm before that thing appears." Just as he finished speaking, ripples appeared in the hall once again as space itself shook crazily. In the next moment, the two huge figures disappeared at the same time. Only the space, which was gradually returning to its previous calm state, and the empty throne were left in the hall. The next morning, a slightly noisy sound woke Wang Yi up from his sleep. However, he realized that the beauty in his arms had already disappeared. He was the only one left on the soft bed. He looked around. Before he could get up, a pretty figure walked in. She wore an apron around her waist and held a breakfast tray in her hands. Seeing that Wang Yi was already awake, a sweet smile appeared on Su Xia's beautiful face. She walked up to him and smiled. "You're awake. I saw that you were sleeping soundly just now, so I didn't wake you up. I just finished making breakfast. How about you try my cooking?" Wang Yi sat on the bed and looked at Su Xia, who was smiling sweetly. He suddenly felt that this kind of life was what he wanted, a life with a beautiful woman by his side. Furthermore, when he woke up, the person he liked had already prepared breakfast for him. As for martial arts, cultivation, and the system, they were all nonsense. Of course, he was just thinking about it. This world was so dangerous. There were myriads of beasts and foreign worlds invading this world. Without powerful strength, how could he protect the beauty in front of him? All right, Wang Yi looked at Su Xia, who looked like a good wife and a mother. He smiled and took the tray from her. Breakfast was a simple affair with an omelette, a bowl of porridge, a side dish, and a couple of xiaobing. However, the dishes were done very exquisitely. It could be seen that the chef had been very attentive when cooking these. Wang Yi picked up a xiaobing and took a small bite. His eyes immediately lit up. The xiaobing was thin and crisp. There must have been sugar filling in the middle as it tasted very sweet. Although the ingredients were very ordinary, the taste was definitely top-notch. Then, Wang Yi took a sip of porridge with a spoon. Su Xia sat beside him while propping up her chin with her hands. Meanwhile, her big beautiful eyes looked at him expectantly. Yes, not bad, my Xia's cooking is much better than a chef's. Wang Yi was very cooperative and praised her with a smile. Upon hearing Wang Yi's affirmation, Su Xia's smile widened and two cute dimples appeared on her face. Wang Yi moved to the side, leaving a space. He smiled and said, "Let's eat together." Hearing this, Su Xia sat down and naturally picked up the spoon that Wang Yi had used just now. Then, she started eating the porridge. I only took a day off from my mentor. I have to return to the Taoist temple to cultivate tomorrow. As Su Xia ate her porridge, she spoke in frustration, as if she could not bear to leave. Wang Yi was slightly stunned before he reacted. Su Xia was still a student of the Taoist temple. Actually, with Wang Yi's status and the resources he could totally let Su Xia stay by his side and help her rapidly increase her strength. However, Wang Yi did not want to restrain Su Xia like a caged bird. She should have her own life. But even so, Wang Yi still had a way to help Su Xia quickly increase her realm. In that case, once we're full, I'll take you out for a nice walk. Wang Yi did not think too much about it and spoke dotingly. Upon hearing this, Su Xia's head kept nodding like a chick pecking at rice. Her face was full of smiles, and her big eyes narrowed into slits. Breakfast was quickly finished. Wang Yi wanted to clean up, but he was forced to sit down by Su Xia. Then, she left the bedroom with the tray. Taking advantage of this time, Wang Yi summoned the system again. System, I want to use the directional sign-in. Ding, would you like to use a sign-in opportunity to exchange for a directional sign-in? Wang Yi nodded and said in his heart, yes, I will use the directional sign-in to obtain a cultivation technique that suits Su Xia's physique. Ding, the host's request has been recorded. Checking in. Ding, the first companion directional sign-in bonus has been triggered. The success rate is 100%. The directional sign-in bonus has been used up. 1. Ding, congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. You have received the Eternal Youth technique. As the system notification disappeared, an antique-looking book with a golden cover appeared in the system space. However, Wang Yi was not in the mood to read the golden secret manual. Instead, his eyes were wide open, and the aura around him fluctuated violently. He felt as if his IQ had been pressed against the ground and rubbed against it. Although the system's voice was still so mechanical and emotionless, Wang Yi felt that it was mocking him. How had he fallen into the same trap 2 times? He had never come out after falling into this trap. He had even slept in it. Wang Yi placed his hand on his forehead and couldn't help but feel annoyed. This system was really cursed. Ever since it had advanced to the intermediate level, it seemed to be targeting him anytime it wished. It was no wonder that the system had prompted him to explore on his own. He still had one more chance. But it didn't matter anymore. After all, the last chance was gone. Not only had he wasted his chance to train himself to the maximum level, but he had also wasted his chance to train Su Xia to the maximum level. However, if he missed it, he missed it. It was impossible to change his fate. After Wang Yi cursed countless times in his heart, he still took out the cultivation technique with the golden cover from the system space. Although the system was a little unreasonable, it was still very considerate. As it did not imprint the contents directly into Wang Yi's mind, the secret manual even included an instruction manual. Wang Yi looked at the instruction manual with a strange expression. It was no wonder he found this cultivation technique familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen it before. Perhaps not many people knew about the Eternal Youth technique, but its other name was definitely famous. It was also known as the immortality. Technique 1. In the world of the novel, this was a peerless technique possessed by Tiantian Tonglao too. However, in the original novel, although this divine technique was peerlessly powerful, it also had a fatal weakness. Every 30 years, the user's cultivation would disappear, and they would completely transform into an ordinary person. Although the system was unscrupulous, it performed well. The system's products were definitely top-notch. The eternal youth technique that he had obtained from signing in could be said to be very different from the original technique. After it had been modified by the system, it had completely become a powerful yin attribute cultivation technique. Not only did the power of the cultivation technique increase greatly, but there were also no more side effects. When cultivated to the extreme, one could regain their youth and achieve the effect of eternal youth. As long as one cultivated this technique to the peak realm, they did not need to step into the connate realm to live for 1,000 years. This could definitely be considered a peerless cultivation technique suitable for women. However, the requirements for cultivators to use this technique were also extremely abnormal. Even the entry-level cultivation of this technique required the cultivator to have a physique comparable to a rank 4 battle warrior rank martial artist. Wang Yi couldn't help but support his forehead with his hand and sigh. It seemed that there was still a long way to go before he could be with Su Xia. While Wang Yi was still studying the cultivation technique with his head lowered, Su Xia had already come to his side and asked with a smile. "What are you looking at so intently?" Wang Yi looked in the direction of the voice and suddenly felt his eyes light up. He could not help but feel a little lost. At this moment, Su Xia was wearing a white dress that covered her knees, revealing her jade-like calves. She wore white high heels on her cute little feet. The light makeup on her face accentuated her features. She was really like a fairy who had walked into the real world from a painting. Even without makeup, she was still stunning. When she put on makeup, her beauty was peerless. This was a perfect description of Su Xia. However, in an instant, Wang Yi regained his senses and blushed. He laughed dryly to hide his embarrassment. Then, he put away the cultivation technique and smiled. "It's nothing." Then, he stood up and imitated the aristocratic etiquette on television in his previous life. He placed one hand behind his back and gestured with the other. "Beautiful Miss Su Xia, I wonder if I have the honor of inviting you to take a look at Kang City." Su Xia cooperated and placed her hand on Wang Yi's. She smiled and said, "Sure." For the rest of the day, the two of them walked through almost the entire Kang City. In the meantime, the smile never left Su Xia's face. Wang Yi enjoyed the company of this beautiful woman. He could not understand why people in his previous life had always said that shopping with women was very tiring. Their last stop was the classic villa that Wang Yi had bought. In the hall, there were a few sparkling dishes on the dining table. An alluring fragrance wafted throughout the room. They sat facing each other. Su Xia asked incredulously, "Did you do all this? I don't recall your cooking being this good before, right?" Wang Yi was stunned. He quickly flipped through his memories and his expression darkened. Su Xia was really polite. How could the previous owner of his body be called a chef? At most, he could only cook the ingredients thoroughly. As for the taste of the dishes, it was impossible to expect anything. It had been hard on Su Xia. Even though she acted like this, she seemed to have eaten his dishes many times before. Wang Yi could not help but complain. The previous owner of his body really did not know his place at all. However, Wang Yi could still handle it. After all, he had previously made up a story to explain his strength. Thus, he simply pushed the matter of knowing how to cook to that mysterious cook. Upon hearing Wang Yi's explanation, Su Xia did not suspect anything. She picked up her chopsticks and took a bite. Then, her eyes lit up. The delicious stimulation to the taste buds and the fragrance between her lips were really irresistible. Su Xia didn't care about the way she ate. She picked up her chopsticks and kept eating. In the middle of her meal, she even gave a thumbs up and said in a muffled voice, "How delicious." Upon hearing Su Xia's praise, Wang Yi smiled. How could it not be delicious? He had put in a lot of effort. The materials used were all rare treasures that could increase the strength of her body. In order to allow Su Xia to eat the dishes smoothly, Wang Yi even used the 9 Suns True Qi to refine the powerful power contained in the precious materials until Su Xia's body could withstand it. It could be said that more than 99% of the power in all the rare ingredients had been wasted. If outsiders discovered that the resources that were enough to support the advancement of a battle warrior rank martial artist had been wasted just like that, they would definitely curse Wang Yi for being a prodigal. Moreover, this was not all. Wang Yi even refined the seven-colored heaven ascension stage that he had previously obtained into a flower dew and added it to the dishes. To use such a treasure that could increase the chances of a rank 9 Grandmaster's breakthrough as a seasoning was a great waste. Even top-notch existences were not qualified to enjoy this table of dishes. However, Wang Yi did not care much about it. The most important thing now was to make Su Xia's body reach the level of a rank 4 martial artist as soon as possible. As for the waste, it didn't matter. In any case, it didn't take much effort for him to get these ingredients. Besides, even if he used it all up, there were plenty of them in the endless wilderness. What was there to care about? Soon, all the dishes on the dining table were clean. Wang Yi looked at Su Xia's slender body and could not understand how she could eat so much food. Burp. Su Xia leaned back in her chair and burped. With a satisfied expression, she said coquettishly, "Yi, I didn't expect you to have such skills. From now on, you will be in charge of our family meals." Wang Yi rubbed her head dotingly and said with a smile, "As long as you like it, I'll make it for you." Then, he asked, "Are you going home today or are you staying here?" Su Xia seemed to like this place very much. As soon as Wang Yi finished speaking, she said, "I'm not leaving. I'll stay here today." As the lights came on in the city, night slowly enveloped the land. The interior of the giant city was brightly lit. It was filled with a quiet and peaceful atmosphere. However, just a wall away, it was like a different world. The wilderness in the night was like an ancient ferocious beast whose bloody mouth was wide open, waiting for its prey to come to it. Just by looking at the wilderness from afar, one could feel their hearts palpitating as if their mind was about to be sucked into the endless darkness. Countless beasts appeared and disappeared in the darkness like ghosts as they headed toward Kang City. At this moment, on the tall city wall of Kang City, Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu stood together. Behind them stood a group of battle warrior rank martial artists. Almost all the higher-ups of Kang City had gathered here. Fang Yuan looked into the distance and saw more and more beasts gathering outside the city. He could not help but frown. His expression was also extremely solemn. He said to Tang Zhenyu beside him, "Brother Tang, you came early. Do you know what's going on?" Upon hearing this, Tang Zhenyu's expression did not look too good either. He shook his head slightly. "When I came, the beasts had already begun to gather, but I don't know why." At this moment, a battle warrior rank martial artist with a saber on his back in the crowd suddenly pointed into the distance. His voice trembled as he shouted in fear, It's a golden armored beast king." Almost everyone subconsciously looked in the direction where the battle warrior rank martial artist was pointing. In the wilderness, amidst the countless beast shadows, they saw a golden figure that was dozens of meters tall and resembled a small mountain. It was slowly moving toward Kang City. Everyone's expressions instantly turned ugly. The huge and golden beast shadow was actually a powerful rank 8 beastmaster. It was a terrifying existence that was at the peak of rank 8 and could break through to rank 9 at any time. Even if Fang Yuan was already a rank 8 Grandmaster, and Tang Zhenyu had successfully broken through to the Grandmaster realm and reached rank 7, it would probably be difficult for the two of them to resist the Beast King. 2. What's that? Could it be a Mad Blood Beast King? Everyone, look, that looks like a Divine Power Beast King. Ellipsis. As the terrifying and powerful Beast Kings were discovered among the beasts, everyone's expressions turned from ugly to extremely pale in an instant. Their eyes were filled with despair and deep helplessness. Almost everyone had the same thought in their hearts: Kang City was done for. If there was only one Beast King, Kang City might be able to barely resist it. However, with so many terrifying Beast Kings gathered together, how could they fight? It would probably be easy for the beasts to massacre the entire city. As time passed, more and more beasts gathered. The vast Kang City was almost completely surrounded by a sea of beasts. Although the danger of Kang City being destroyed was right in front of him, Fang Yuan did not panic as he stood on the wall surrounding the giant city. His gaze swept across the group of battle warrior rank martial artists. This group of old brothers who had fought with him for countless years would live and die with him. As he looked at them, a hint of pity flashed across his eyes. He struggled for a moment, but in the end, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Looking around, he said in a solemn voice, "This battle is dangerous and we will definitely die. However, behind this city wall are the millions of people of Kang City. We can't retreat. Everyone, are you willing to fight to the death with me and protect the millions of lives in Kang City? That grand voice instantly entered everyone's ears. At this moment, the battle warrior rank martial artists seemed to have forgotten about the few rank 8 beast kings outside the city. There was no longer any fear on their faces, only endless determination. Then, they replied in unison, "We are willing to follow you and fight to the death to protect the millions of living beings in Kang City." Although there were only a few dozen people, their voices were filled with heroism. In an instant, their voices pierced through the clouds as if they wanted to drown out the beast roaring outside the city. Upon seeing this, Fang Yuan no longer hesitated and immediately ordered in a low voice. "Activate the red alert and implement temporary martial law. Mobilize all the martial artists in the city. They will be under the command of the City Protection Army and participate in the city defense. All non-martial artists and civilians shall enter the underground shelters. Zhao Fan, listen up. I order you to lead 10,000 city guards to guard city walls A1 to A5. Wang Ning, listen up. I order you to lead 10,000 city guards to guard city walls A6 to A10. Ellipsis. As the orders were given, although Fang Yuan was already mentally prepared, his voice still trembled uncontrollably. He knew that they would die, but he still personally pushed his old brothers into the endless abyss. Only Fang Yuan, who was involved in commanding his men, could understand the suffering and pain. Everyone naturally knew Fang Yuan's concerns. Someone in the crowd suddenly stood up and said, "Lord, don't worry. If a beast enters the city, it will step on our corpses. As long as one of us doesn't die, we will definitely not let any beasts enter the city." After saying that, that person gathered the city guards and headed straight for the city wall that he was defending. Seeing this, everyone accepted their orders and left. Someone smiled naturally and said, "Lord Guardian, if we can come back alive from this battle, you'll have to treat us. Take out the good wine you've kept for many years and let everyone drink to their heart's content." At the same time, someone shouted boldly, "Lord, don't worry. No one will take half a step back in this battle. We're not afraid, we can only die." Upon seeing everyone leave, Fang Yuan felt as if 1,000 knives were coming at him. His heart ached and he suddenly shouted at the crowd, "Everyone, take care. After this battle, if Kang City isn't destroyed and we don't die, the Guardian's residence will hold a celebration banquet for 3 days. I'll drink with you until we're drunk." Fang Ming saw that all the battle warrior rank martial artists had received their missions and left. Even after everyone had left, there were still no missions assigned to him. Anxiety appeared on his face as he spoke anxiously. "Father, I'm already a battle warrior rank martial artist. As your son, I should live and die with Kang City at this critical moment. Why don't you let me participate in the defense of the city wall?" Fang Yuan looked at the slightly irritable Fang Mings and could not help but reprimand him. "Now that the life and death of the entire Kang City are tied to you, what's the use of showing off your courage? What can a rank 4 warrior like you do in a beast siege of this level?" Upon hearing this, Fang Mings was suddenly stunned. He looked at the angry Fang Yuan and asked in confusion, "Father, what do you mean?" Seeing this, Fang Yuan said resentfully, "There are probably more than 10 rank 8 beast kings gathered outside the city. How can Kang City resist such a terrifying beast tide? Only with Sir Wang's help can we fight for a chance of survival for Kang City. Furthermore, Sir Wang thinks highly of you. As long as you can invite Sir Wang over, Kang City will naturally be safe." Fang Yuan's words were like thunder exploding in Fang Mingzi's mind, instantly waking him up. Fang Mings wanted to slap himself hard. He was also stunned by this terrifying scene and had subconsciously forgotten about Wang Yi's existence. Without further ado, Fang Ming sped down the city wall and ran toward the center of the city. Fang Yuan did not relax at all as he watched Fang Mingzi's figure gradually disappear into the night. Instead, he frowned and his eyes were filled with worry. Upon seeing this, Tang Zhenyu couldn't help but ask, "Are you afraid that Mings won't be able to invite Sir Wang?" When Fang Yuan heard this, he shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "I'm afraid that even if Sir Wang comes, he won't be able to resist." Tang Zhenyu was stunned and asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" He had personally witnessed Wang Yi's terrifying strength. Wang Yi was a powerful being who could kill a rank 9 grandmaster with a wave of his hand. Although there were many beast kings and beasts outside the city, with this person's strength, he should be able to easily suppress them. Upon hearing this, the worry in Fang Yuan's eyes could not help but deepen. He pointed at the sea of beasts outside the city and sighed, if it's just these beasts, I also believe that Sir Wang can easily suppress them. But Brother Tang, look. There are endless beasts here and countless natural enemies. However, there's no chaos. Instead, everything is in order. Moreover, it has been so long, yet the beasts have only surrounded us without attacking. Even those powerful rank 8 beast kings are holding back as if they are waiting for some powerful existence. With such a formation, I'm afraid that ordinary beast kings aren't qualified to receive such treatment, right? Only top-notch or even connate demon venerables can receive a treatment like this. However, Langya County City should already know about the current situation. Reinforcements can arrive at any time. We can only hope that Sir Wang can stall for time. When Tang Zhenyu heard this, he waved his hand as if he had infinite confidence in Wang Yi. He smiled and said, Brother Fang, you're worrying too much. If Sir Wang is willing to make a move, as long as it's not a connate demon venerable, I believe that no matter how terrifying the being is, Sir Wang can suppress it. Fang Yuan looked at the beasts for a long time without saying anything. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long while, he finally sighed and said faintly, I hope so. Dong, 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 ellipsis. 9 grand bells sounded like rolling thunder, instantly spreading to every corner of Kang City. The city instantly fell into chaos. Everyone was awakened from their sleep with endless fear and panic on their faces. There was no one in Kang City who did not know what this bell represented. Even children who had just learned how to speak knew that when the Kang City bell rang 9 times, it meant that Kang City was in danger of being destroyed. All ranked martial artists, no matter their identity or status, had to participate in the war unconditionally. Meanwhile, all civilians had to follow orders and enter the underground shelters. Although the city was very noisy, after the initial chaos, the crowd headed toward the entrance of the underground shelter closest to them as if they had rehearsed countless times. At this moment, in a corner of a shelter, a group of people with devout expressions on their faces surrounded a middle-aged man, who was wearing colorful robes and a long jade crown on his head. The middle-aged man also had a pious expression on his face as he said, the world is suffering. The human race is struggling to survive in this vast wilderness. The omnipotent Sun God Venerable has already descended to the mortal world. Only by believing in the Sun God sect and serving under the Sun God Venerable can we survive this calamity. With that, the middle-aged man suddenly pointed at a woman in the corner with a bloody leg. The upper part of the woman's leg must have been cut by something sharp on the way into the underground shelter. The middle-aged man suddenly shouted, Pray sincerely, and the Sun God Venerable will descend and heal all the pain in your body. The woman seemed to be frightened. She really knelt there and kept praying. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Just as the woman was praying, a dazzling golden light descended from the sky and transformed into a 7-meter-tall figure. The figure was like an immortal god that had descended to the world. His golden eyes swept across everyone. Then, the golden figure pointed at the woman and enveloped her with a golden light. As the woman gaped, the hideous wound on her leg simply disappeared without a trace or pain. Then, the golden figure turned into light again and disappeared from the underground shelter. Upon seeing this, the middle-aged man shouted crazily, The Sun God Venerable has appeared in the world and saved all living beings from suffering. If you join the Sun God sect and obtain the protection of the Sun God Venerable, you can survive the calamity of Kang City. Only then did the surrounding people react. They hurriedly knelt in the direction where the golden figure had disappeared. Their expressions were also filled with madness as they shouted, The Sun God Venerable is benevolent. He has saved me from waiting in suffering. Ellipsis. The same thing was happening in other corners of the underground shelter. The only difference was that the golden figure that appeared elsewhere was only 6 meters tall. At this moment, in Wang Yi's villa, he looked at Su Xia, who was fully armed and had a serious expression. She looked as if she was about to go to the battlefield. Wang Yi couldn't help but support his forehead with his hand, and black lines kept appearing on his forehead. He didn't even know that there was such equipment in the villa. Where had Su Xia found it? Besides, this was just a small matter. Did she have to be so serious? Even if the sky collapsed, he would still be there to hold it up. At the same time, Wang Yi's spiritual power quickly spread out in all directions. Although his spiritual power could not cover the outside of the city yet, seeing the chaotic crowd on the streets and the few words he heard, he could roughly determine that the danger should come from the siege of the beasts outside the city. Moreover, Wang Yi could vaguely sense that there were indeed several extremely powerful auras entrenched outside the city. At this moment, beyond the endless beast tide outside the city, two figures as huge as mountains suddenly appeared, surrounded by a terrifying pressure. In the next moment, two huge figures disappeared from where they were standing and appeared in front of all the beasts as if they had teleported. The bodies of the terrifying beasts, which were almost the same height as the city wall, stood there. The extremely oppressive atmosphere made it difficult to breathe. The martial artists on the city wall seemed to be unable to withstand such powerful pressure. They looked extremely terrified and subconsciously took a few steps back. Meanwhile, the moment the two huge figures appeared, Fang Yuan and Tang Jianyu's expressions turned ashen. How could they not recognize these two beings? They were under the demon venerable Tiandu. The Golden Edge Great Beast King and the Wind-Chasing Great Beast King were both top-notch beings. They were also the true enemies of countless humans in the entire Langyu domain. Any one of them could destroy most experts in the giant human cities. The two of them really could not understand how a small city like Kang City could provoke two such existences. Just as everyone was filled with fear and doubt, one of the huge golden beasts with bone spikes on its limbs opened its huge mouth and suddenly roared, "Jinlin Guoshi, come out." The shocking beast roar turned into a terrifying invisible sound wave that surged towards the giant city. The city wall seemed to have a defense mechanism. The moment it sensed danger, a white halo appeared on the wall and enveloped the entire Kang City. As a result, Kang City was like a white bowl that had been turned upside down in the endless wilderness. As the terrifying sound wave came into contact with Kang City, the white barrier was not able to withstand such a terrifying force at all. It flickered a few times, like a mirror about to shatter before dissipating into the air. Then, spiderweb cracks appeared on the city wall. Fortunately, the shield must have weakened the power of the sound waves. On the city wall, the martial artists below the battle warrior rank who had endured the roar directly spat out blood and were seriously injured. Some even bled from their 7 orifices due to the shock and directly passed away. With just this roar, more than 30% of the city guards were injured, and more than 1,000 people died. Upon seeing this tragic scene, Fang Yuan's eyes could not help but pop out. Endless anger burned in his pupils, and his heart was constantly bleeding. They were all good men of Kang City. One second, they were fighting to the death to protect Kang City, and the next, they were cold corpses. How could he not be angry and heartbroken? On the other hand, the golden beast that roared acted as if it had done something insignificant. It did not care about everyone's anger and despair at all. Turning its huge head, its golden pupils swept across the people on the city wall and finally locked onto Fang Yuan. Then, he said calmly, "Let Jinlin Guoshi come out and accept his death. Let the traitor Silver Wing come out and surrender. Otherwise, even if we wipe out the entire Kang City and use the blood of tens of millions of living beings, it will still be difficult to appease Lord Demon Venerable's anger." Fang Yuan could not hear anything the other party said at this moment. His mind was only filled with those martial artists who had fallen to the ground and died. A powerful aura kept rising. At that moment, Fang Yuan's body was glowing as if there were flames burning. When faced with 2 top-notch beast kings and more than 10 rank 8 beast kings, Fang Yuan knew very well that he could not even resist for a moment. Actually, the best choice for him now was to give up on Kang City and leave directly. With his strength as a rank 8 Grand Master, he was still confident that he could survive. However, as the guardian of this city, he was usually high and mighty. He was supported and respected by millions of living beings. At this time, he was unwilling to give up the Kang City that had given birth to him and raised him. He was unwilling to give up on the tens of millions of people in Kang City who believed in him. Fang Yuan almost did not hesitate at all. The powerful spiritual power of a rank 8 Grand Master instantly burned, turning into a raging fire that directly ignited his physical strength. The vast and surging true qi was like endless fuel, making his physical strength burn even more vigorously. An extremely powerful force quickly gathered and rose in his body, like a sleeping ancient demon god about to awaken and rule the world. At this moment, Fang Yuan seemed to have broken through some kind of barrier and boundary. The aura around him suddenly soared, and he seemed to have the power to resist a Grand Master. Tang Jianyu did not hesitate when he saw this. He imitated Fang Yuan and ignited himself. At this moment, Fang Yuan suddenly rushed toward the 2 top beast kings with determination. He did not dare to delay for a moment because he knew very well that this power that far exceeded his own realm could not last that long. This was the supreme power he had obtained by burning his spiritual power, burning his true qi, burning his physical strength, and burning everything in him. When all his power eventually burned away, he would fall out of this state. At best, he would become an ordinary person without any power. At worst, he would die. All of this sounded complicated, but it actually happened in an instant. When the loud roar sounded, Wang Yi immediately reacted. It turned out that the beasts had surrounded the city because of him. His expression could not help but turn extremely ugly. As his body trembled slightly, an inexplicable force spread out with the villa in the center and directly blocked the sound waves in the void. Although Su Xia was not injured by the sound wave, she was still an extremely smart person. Looking at Wang Yi, she could instantly tell that the owner of the voice was definitely an extremely terrifying existence. Wang Yi turned around and gave Su Xia an ugly smile. "Wait for me at home. I'll be back soon." With that, Wang Yi disappeared from the room. Then, another voice said, "Watch the house." Su Xia was obviously still in a daze when she noticed a cat with silver wings swaying out of the corner of the room. The cat walked in front of her and suddenly stood up, looking like it wanted to protect her. What no one knew was that in some corner of the underground shelter. When she heard the words, Jinlin Guoshi, a young woman stood there in a daze. The bag in her hand fell to the ground, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. The scene changed. Outside the city wall, the two top-notch beast kings looked at the two people burning themselves. A trace of disdain flashed across their huge beast eyes. Stupid humans, so what if they could temporarily possess the power of a rank 9 expert? Could they still cause any waves when faced with top-notch beings? The outcome had long been decided. Even if they struggled to the death, could they escape the fate of death? Just as Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu were about to rush out and fight to the death with the top-notch beast kings, they suddenly felt someone pressing down on their shoulders. A huge force came from their shoulders, interrupting their forward momentum and pinning them to the ground. At the same time, the flames on their bodies were instantly extinguished, and the power that had been burned away was quickly recovering. At this moment, the two of them turned around in horror. When they realized who was standing behind them, they seemed to have found their pillar of support. They heaved a sigh of relief almost at the same time as if they had survived a disaster. This person was finally here. At this moment, Wang Yi's expression was terrifyingly dark as if water could drip from it. His gaze swept across the beast tied outside the city coldly, and the coldness in his gaze seemed to freeze the void. Along the way, he saw the tragic scene in the city. Houses had collapsed, and there was mourning everywhere. However, as Fang Yuan had activated the red warning, everyone hid in the underground shelters. As a result, although countless people had been injured, very few people died. However, when Wang Yi saw the martial artists wearing the uniforms of the city guards on the city wall, he realized that almost everyone was injured. Furthermore, countless martial artists were seriously injured. There were also cold corpses lying on the ground. Wang Yi's eyes were red and he could barely suppress the boundless anger in his heart. This beast tide was clearly here for him. It could also be said that these people had died because of him. How could he not be angry? How could he not be hateful? How could he not feel regret? They were living beings and humans like him. However, they were now cold corpses. This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. If he had attacked earlier when he discovered the abnormality, perhaps these people would not have died. When Wang Yi appeared on the city wall, the two top-notch beast kings had already locked onto him. The golden beast king suddenly said in a cold voice, "You're finally willing to come out, Jinlin Guoshi." The voice of the golden beast king was like a fuse that ignited the boundless anger in Wang Yi's heart. Boom! A terrifying pressure instantly swept across the entire battlefield. Wang Yi's aura was also constantly rising, producing intense friction with the air. Electric arcs flashed in the void. At this moment, all eyes were on him. Wang Yi was like a demon god. Countless bolts of lightning surrounded him, and his divine might suppressed the world. Die! Wang Yi also roared, but Wang Yi's roar was much stronger than the roar of the golden beast king. Under Wang Yi's extreme anger, it was as if a mysterious power from an unknown space had been drawn out, and endless power appeared in the world. Meanwhile, the sound wave was like a heaven-splitting blade that carried a destructive aura as it charged in all directions with Wang Yi as the center. Along the city wall, a group of injured city guards helped each other to the city wall. In the next moment, everyone stood there in a daze. They looked at the beast tied below with widened eyes that were filled with disbelief. They could not accept the reality before them. As the sound waves swept past, endless waves suddenly rose in the sea of beasts. The beast soldier rank beasts were simply blown into pieces on the spot without leaving behind a complete corpse. Meanwhile, the beast general rank beasts had their spiritual seas shattered. They fell to the ground weakly, turning into beast corpses. Only the beast kings could barely survive the sound waves. However, their bodies were also covered in wounds, and their blood was all over their bodies. The only ones who were unharmed by this roar were the two top-notch beast kings. However, it was not that they were so powerful that Wang Yi could not do anything to them. It was just that Wang Yi wanted to keep the entire beast tied here. He did not take the initiative to target the top-notch beast kings. Otherwise, how could two top-notch beast kings withstand Wang Yi's monstrous anger? At this moment, in the endless wilderness outside Kang City, it was truly an apocalyptic scene. Scarlet beast blood dyed the surrounding land red. Red puddles had formed in some of the craters, and pieces of dire beast flesh were scattered everywhere. From afar, one could feel the tragic aura assaulting their faces, making their hearts palpitate in fear. On the city wall, Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu were simply stunned. The two of them looked at each other, and they saw the deep fear and disbelief in each other's eyes. They could not believe that the tragic scene in front of them was caused by just a roar. Even Tang Zhenyu, who had personally seen Wang Yi attack and knew how terrifying Wang Yi's strength was, couldn't accept it. That was a beast tide composed of tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of beasts. However, they were all killed or injured almost instantly. How much great power did it take to do that? A martial grandmaster definitely could not do it. Even a top-notch expert could not do it. At the thought of this, the two of them looked at Wang Yi and shared a terrifying thought. Could this person be a Conate realm expert? Then, as if they were shocked by their own thoughts, they shook their heads vigorously. That was impossible. Although this person was extremely powerful, how could it be so easy to break through to the Conate realm? Otherwise, why would only one human Conate venerable appear in the vast and endless Langyu domain after more than 100 years? Moreover, this person did not have the special charm of a Conate venerable. At this moment, the city guards on the city wall did not think too much about it. They only knew that the endless beast tide had been killed by the roar of a supreme human powerhouse. After that figure appeared, the crisis that could destroy a city and wipe out the entire race no longer existed. Victory! 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 The human race is undefeated. The human race is undefeated. The human race is undefeated. The soldiers seemed to have forgotten that they were still injured and that they were in pain. They simply burst into tsunami-like cheers. It was also these cheers that could break through the sky that woke up the dire beasts that were still alive. They looked at the blood and flesh on the ground and the corpses of their fellow beasts that had lost all signs of life. They could not accept the terrible result of such misery and horror. They had originally come with the might of the heavens, wanting to directly suppress the giant city that belonged to the human race. Then, they would force the human race to hand over Jinlin Guoshi and the silver-winged cloud leopard. However, when the nearly 100 million elite beast warriors faced that human expert, they were actually killed without any resistance. Such a terrible loss made them feel as if their hearts were trembling. It was as if blood was dripping from their hearts. At the same time, they were terrified. When they came, the beasts were overwhelming in numbers, but in the end, only a few beast kings were left. Such a loss could be considered a serious blow to the entire beast race in the Langyu domain. Even the demon venerable would feel a heartache. How could they report this to the demon venerable? The first reveal of this chapter happened through N to 0 to Velbayan. However, Wang Yi did not give them much time to grieve or fear. 3 flying daggers directly appeared above his head, constantly rising and falling as they shone with a dazzling light. Then, saber chi that contained endless divine might descended as if it could cut through the void. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. 2 flying daggers, one red and one purple, slashed toward the 2 top-notch beast kings, accompanied by 3 sounds of air being torn apart. Meanwhile, the remaining golden flying dagger kept flashing in the void, as if it was ignoring space and distance. Every time it appeared, it would definitely appear on the head of a beast king. As the flying dagger disappeared, a beast king would die on the spot. The golden flying dagger only flickered a few times. The few beast kings who were lucky enough to survive previously had also turned into corpses. Bang! Suddenly, a dazzling light rose. The flying daggers that were slashing at the 2 top beast kings seemed to have encountered some trouble and stopped in the air. Light flashed on the bodies of the 2 top-notch beast kings, and a wisp of will phantom appeared and gathered in front of them. As the void trembled violently, the phantom became more and more solid. At a glance, the flesh and bones on the seemingly physical body of the phantom also seemed very realistic. Wang Yi did not care much about his flying daggers being stopped. Instead, he sized up this phantom that had just appeared with interest. The figure that had just formed looked like a middle-aged scholar. He had the aura of an academic. However, Wang Yi could sense a violent power hidden under the phantom's calm appearance. It seemed to have the power to destroy the world. Actually, all of this was a coincidence. Previously, Wang Yi had shattered the spiritual sea and the divine sense left behind by the demon Venerable Tiandu in the silver-winged cloud leopard. Just in case, demon Venerable Tiandu deliberately left another wisp of extremely strong spiritual will on the two top-notch beast kings. When he sensed Wang Yi's terrifying attack that could almost destroy the world, that wisp of spiritual will was stimulated and awakened. Only then did the wisp of spiritual will appear. It controlled the endless power of heaven and earth to resist Wang Yi's technique. Wait till next part.